Chapter 3265. Ling Han sensed a very obscure aura that was extremely powerful. It should be the ultimate bone realm, he thought. Wait here first, he said in a low voice. The best thing about Snow Collar was that she wouldn't ask too many questions and only nodded obediently. Ling Han extended his body and walked up the mountain. His footsteps were light and almost didn't make a single sound. After a short while, he arrived at the top of the mountain. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A loud snoring sound traveled over like thunder. Ling Han slowed down his steps. He knew that the ultimate bone realm was too powerful. Even though it was sleeping so soundly now, it would immediately wake up at the slightest movement. He looked over and couldn't help but be surprised because the existence that was snoring was actually a dog. The fat dog's entire body was almost perfectly round. Its fur was so black that it glowed as if it had been smeared with oil. This dog's body was very big, but it wasn't at the level of a giant. It was about the size of a water buffalo. Now it was snoring loudly. A tongue was sticking out, and as it breathed, there was actually a bubble above its nostrils that continuously expanded and shrunk. One couldn't help but be curious when this bubble would explode. Such a fat dog. Could it be at least in the ultimate bone realm? If this was a female dog, could he let the big black dog tempt it? This thought flashed through Ling Han's mind. However, he immediately laughed in spite of himself. Even if the large black dog could be released, and even if it really was a female dog, with the large black dog's despicable nature, which female dog would be interested in it? Forget it. He scanned again. He found a tree beside this fat dog. This tree was very short, only half a person's height, but it grew very well. The crown of the tree was shaped like a hemisphere. The most important thing was that the leaves on it were actually all different. Some were like swords, some like knives, some like spears. There were all kinds of them. When the wind blew, these leaves even made a clanking sound, as if there were really weapons colliding with each other. Instinctively, Ling Han thought that this was a treasure tree. That was why there was a powerful demon dog guarding it. The warning sign at the bottom clearly indicated that the Emperor Capital Academy knew of the existence of this fat dog. Of course, they wouldn't have missed this strange treasure tree. Perhaps this demon dog was raised by the Academy. Although the relationship between demonic beasts and humans was not very good, it was still possible for human experts to tame demonic beasts as battle pets to guard their homes. The problem was the watchdog was just lying there. How could he get close? Ling Han did not think that he would be able to get close to a paramount bone demon dog without being discovered, even if it was sleeping soundly. I got it. He retreated and explained the plan to the little maid. Young master, isn't this too dangerous? Summon Snow's face was pale. That was a paramount bone realm demonic beast. It could easily bite her young master to death. Don't worry. Ling Han comforted her. The little pink pig grinned coldly. It actually hoped that Ling Han would be eaten by a demonic beast. Before it could gloat for long, it felt a weight on its neck and was lifted up by Ling Han. You're coming with me. Goo. The perverted pig squealed. Naturally, it was unwilling. How could Ling Han pay any attention to it? He first hid the origin nurturing bottle gourd in a secluded place, and then carried out the test. When he ran close to it, he used his mind to communicate with it. His body immediately disappeared from where it was. If anyone were to see this, they would definitely scream out loud. In reality, Ling Han had entered the inner space of the essence nurturing gourd. Perverted pig, cooperate. Otherwise, I'll throw you outside to be eaten by a dog, Ling Han said to Perverted Pig as he came out of the gourd. It didn't enter the gourd with him. Perverted Pig nodded unwillingly. It wasn't that it was afraid of being eaten by a demonic beast, but if it was taken away by a demonic beast, where could it find a pretty sister? Done. Ling Han nodded. He brought Perverted Pig just in case. This could intimidate demonic beasts, although he didn't know if it would have any effect on Paramount Bone Realm beasts. After arranging Summon Snow, Ling Han prepared to act. His plan was very simple. He would use himself as bait to attract the demonic dog to chase him. Summon Snow would take the opportunity to pluck the leaves. As for Ling Han, he ran near the essence nurturing gourd and directly entered it. If the fat dog caught up to him in advance, he would use Perverted Pig to threaten it. Hopefully, this fat pig would be able to show its might. Xiao, he threw out a stone. It heavily smashed into the ground, causing a loud sound. That fat dog didn't even move. If not for the bubbles still coming out of its nose, people would really suspect that it was dead. It's fine if a pig is this lazy. After all, it's a pig. But how can a dog be this lazy? Ling Han muttered. Perverted pig was indignant and bared its fangs at him. You're not allowed to look down on pigs like this. Again, Ling Han threw another stone. This time, he directly aimed at the demonic dog. Pa! The stone smashed over, but when it touched the demonic dog's body, it suddenly exploded into pieces. So powerful. Ling Han was shocked. The blood chi of the blood transformation realm soared to the heavens. This ultimate bone realm was even more awesome. The aura that seeped out of their bodies was so terrifying that even rocks could be shattered. No wonder this demonic dog was sleeping so soundly. Then could he walk over and pluck the leaves? Ling Han considered this tempting thought. His feet involuntarily moved, and he quietly approached that fat dog. Very good, this fellow didn't react at all. Some and Snow watched from afar in astonishment. This wasn't going according to their plan. Ling Han was already less than 10 feet away from the fat dog, but the dog was still snoring loudly. Very good. Keep it up, good dog. Ling Han walked to the side of the tree and carefully examined it. In just an instant, he could determine that there were a total of 999 leaves on this tree. And each leaf was in the shape of a weapon. They were all swords, but there were also short swords, long swords, curved swords, hooked swords, and so on. Ling Han had a strange feeling. Why did these leaves really seem to be able to grow into weapons? What a curious tree. He was just about to pluck a leaf to study when he suddenly discovered that something was wrong. Where was the snoring sound? He abruptly turned around, but he was shocked because the fat dog had actually stood up at some point and was staring at him. When it saw him turn around, it opened its mouth and spat out a long tongue, saliva flowing out of it. Fuck, so embarrassing. Ling Han chuckled, and then suddenly made a move. Goo! The pig let out a miserable cry, because it had been forcefully stuffed into the big dog's mouth by Ling Han. Then Ling Han broke into a run. Using the flying shuttle steps, he instantly exploded with terrifying speed. Pung! A sonic boom exploded, forming a terrifying shockwave that caused the dog's fur to dance wildly. That fat dog was startled. This kind of change had also greatly exceeded its expectations. But it also immediately turned around and ran in pursuit of Ling Han. Goo! The pig let out a miserable cry. It was still in the dog's mouth, bastard. Chapter 3266. After running a few steps, the fat dog also realized that it was somewhat uncomfortable to stuff a pig in its mouth. Although the suckling pig wasn't big, its body wasn't that big either. After stuffing a small suckling pig into its mouth, its upper jaw was stuck up high, almost blocking its eyes. It bit down hard, wanting to bite the small pig into pieces and use it as a snack. However, when it bit down hard, it found that the pig was surprisingly flexible. Although its teeth bit down, they didn't penetrate the pig's body. Instead, they immediately bounced back. What was going on? The fat dog was a little confused. It was a ultimate bone realm existence, but it couldn't bite a small suckling pig to pieces. It bit again, but it was still useless. After a few bites, it had to admit that it really couldn't bite through this guy in its mouth. How could it chase like this? It hurriedly coughed and spat out the small suckling pig. The little lascivious pig immediately began to whine, its fury overflowing. On one hand, it scolded Ling Han for not being loyal, and on the other hand, it scolded this stupid dog for being blind, even daring to bite it. Just wait, after it left, it would eat dog meat every day until it vomited. The big fat dog stared at the pig. It was actually full of interest in this pig, but after thinking about it, it was better to capture the guy who wanted to steal the leaves first. After all, this was the Academy's territory, and this guy actually dared to steal things. It had to capture him. When it thought of a certain person's leather whip, it couldn't help but tremble. It didn't want to be beaten. Chase. It spread its four legs and chased after Ling Han. Call Snow was dumbfounded. This seemed to be going according to plan. The big fat dog went to chase the young master, but she still felt that something was wrong. She hurriedly ran out, first to pick up a few leaves, then ran over to pick up the small suckling pig and ran away. This big fat dog would be back soon. They had to leave as soon as possible, or they would definitely be in big trouble. Ling Han ran, although he started first, and the big dog was delayed for a moment. Its speed was still very fast, even faster than when he used the shuttle steps. Looking back, he saw that it was rapidly approaching. This was almost twice the speed of sound. Seeing that half a minute was almost up, Ling Han realized that he was far from reaching his limit. Otherwise, he would have felt his whole body heating up, especially his legs, as if they were about to explode. This was the result of his body tempering. His physique had become stronger, and the limits of what he could endure had naturally risen as well. Even so, the big fat dog was getting closer and closer. It wouldn't be long before it caught up to him. Fuck. Weren't you so lazy that you couldn't even wake up from being hit by a rock? How did you suddenly wake up? You're obviously so lazy, so why are you running so fast? Speaking of which, is all your fat for show? How can you still run so fast? Ling Han cursed in his heart. He was about to be caught, but he was only a short distance away from the essence-nourishing gourd. He activated the Monkey King's technique, and his speed suddenly increased. Pung, he reached about 1.5 times the speed of sound, and the big fat dog's approaching speed immediately slowed down. The big fat dog let out a snort. There was no way it would let this thief escape. It stretched out its claws and slapped at Ling Han. The distance was close enough. However, right at this moment, swoosh, the dog's eyes blurred, and Ling Han's figure was already nowhere to be seen. What was going on? The big fat dog hurriedly stopped and arched its nose to search everywhere. However, the little thief's aura was cut off and disappeared in front of it. This was too strange. It searched around but found nothing. Returning to its original spot, it sat down on its butt and scratched its neck with its claws. Its heart was full of confusion. Forget it, so be it. In any case, nothing was stolen by that little thief. As long as it didn't say anything, it would pretend that nothing had happened. As the saying went, it was better to have less trouble. Going home and sleeping was the most convenient. This fat dog's lazy attribute had the upper hand. Moreover, it also wanted to study that little suckling pig. It clearly sensed any energy fluctuations, and how its skin was so thick that it could even block its sharp teeth. It trotted all the way back. Huh, where's the pig? Looking at that short tree again, it couldn't help but be dumbfounded. 13 leaves were missing. Looking at the traces of plucking, they were still very fresh. Obviously, they had been plucked away after it left. Not good. It had fallen into the trap of luring the tiger. No, luring the dog away from the mountain. When it thought of a certain person's whip, it couldn't help but tuck its tail between its legs. Hiss, should it consider digging a hole and hiding for a few days? After the big fat dog left, Ling Han hurriedly came out of the vitality-nurturing gourd, and immediately ran down the mountain to meet up with Huan Shui. If that fat dog suddenly became intelligent and squatted at the place where he had disappeared, things would be very bad. Young master. When she saw Ling Han, Huan Shui finally heaved a sigh of relief. She hurriedly took out 13 leaves and handed them to Ling Han. Because time was tight, she had only plucked these few. Ling Han put the 12 leaves into the gourd and only took out one to study. The Academy had sent a paramount bone realm demonic beast to guard this tree, so it definitely couldn't be an ordinary item. However, in a short period of time, Ling Han could only come to one conclusion, and that was that the leaves themselves were extremely tough, and he couldn't tear them. Just this point alone was enough to prove that these leaves were extraordinary. I'd better wait until I get out and connect to the internet before I investigate. He kept the leaves and began his robbery plan. With his luck attribute at work, he could always meet people who were blind enough to take the initiative to rob him. He didn't even need to look for them himself. Then, the number of red cloud gems he had increased, almost reaching 100. Finally, the 10-day deadline was up. Everyone was sent out by the array and appeared on the square again. Most of them sighed. They didn't get a single red cloud gem, and obviously had no fate to enter Emperor Capital Academy. Those who have red cloud gems stay. The rest of you leave immediately. An extremely dignified old man from the academy said loudly. His voice was loud and clear, so loud that it hurt people's ears. The crowd started to leave, leaving only a few people behind. The people from the academy counted, and couldn't help but have strange expressions. Their original intention was to pick out the 100 people who had the most red cloud gems, but there were only 79 people in front of them. Then as long as they verified whether they all had red cloud gems, they would be able to pass and enter Emperor Capital Academy. Take out your red cloud gems, the old man said. According to those who knew him, his name was Pan Tianyu, a senior instructor of the academy. He was famous for his fiery temper, and he was a paramount bone realm cultivator. Therefore, don't make him angry, or you would definitely be beaten up for nothing. Everyone took out their respective red cloud gems, ranging from 1 to 4 or 5. Even someone like Gu Qiuling, who had 20 veins, had only obtained 12 red cloud gems. Hong Tianliang had even less, with only 9. He had been robbed by Ling Han, so of course he wouldn't have a lot of red cloud gems. Pan Tianyu was surprised. This number wasn't right. This time, the academy had clearly put in 300 red cloud gems. Could it be that there were still more than half that hadn't been discovered? Chapter 3268. Ling Han believed that his halo of hatred would definitely take effect and bring him trouble, but he was not afraid. Instead, he treated it as a form of entertainment. However, before this could take effect, Ling Han was called out to him. On the first day of school for new students, there would be a lecture as usual. Everyone was summoned to the martial arts field. The ground here was made of sand. Even if a paramount bone realm cultivator fought, there was no need to worry about damage. At most, they could just fill in the sand after the battle. There were not only 79 new students, but about 100. Because there were also blood transformation realm new students, they did not need to be screened, and directly entered the academy. Flagmaster Lien. Ling Han's eyes lit up when he saw Lien Xuerong. Lien Xuerong also saw him and nodded. I knew I would definitely see you here. Ling Han laughed. Although he believed in Lien Xuerong's strength, the beast tide was too terrifying. He was naturally worried. Only now did he finally relax after seeing Lien Xuerong. The two of them were probably the only two survivors of the black-green flags. They were very sad when they talked about the situation that day. Ling Han. Someone walked over. It was Tuoba Tianhuang. He had not been screened, but he had appeared here. This could only mean one thing. He had broken through to the blood transformation realm. Ling Han nodded. Long time no see. Tuoba Tianhuang was silent for a moment. You have to break through to the blood transformation realm as soon as possible. I want to fight with you again. At the same age and realm, he had only lost to Ling Han. This was a stain on his record that he wanted to erase. Ling Han smiled. The capital is full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. There are many geniuses. There's no need to target me, right? He was not afraid to fight. Instead, he wanted to give face to the other party, since they were both from Hidden Tiger City. He did not want to be traumatized by 2 defeats and never be able to recover. Tuoba Tianhuang smirked coldly and said, Ling Han, could it be that you are afraid? Ling Han sighed. Why didn't he accept his good intentions? All right. Since you want to fight, why don't we do it today? He said lightly. I won't bully you. I'll let you use only one hand. Tuoba Tianhuang almost lost his breath. You, a meridian opening expert, wanted to fight me, but you wanted to use a single hand? Although he had just entered the blood transformation realm, because he had cultivated 20 meridians in the illuminating pulse realm, his first transformation's battle strength was comparable to that of an ordinary third transformation. This is something Ling Han can compare to. You're too arrogant, he said coldly. Fine, I'll teach you a lesson first. I'll let you know the difference in cultivation levels. Defeating Ling Han by suppressing him in terms of cultivation level would naturally not make him happy. But he was truly enraged and wanted to teach Ling Han a lesson. Just as the two of them were about to make their move, they saw someone from the academy arrive. This time a vice dean had come. His name was Sui Tang, and he was at the extreme bone realm. However, it was unclear which stage he was at. With this, Ling Han and Tuoba Tianhuang naturally could not fight anymore. The two of them returned to their own teams. Sui Tang gave a speech, the gist of which was to welcome the arrival of the new students. He hoped that they would work hard in their cultivation in the following period of time, because if the illuminating pulse realm could not break through to the blood transformation realm within 5 years, they would be expelled from the academy. The blood transformation realm had a 10-year deadline. If they did not break through to the extreme bone realm, they would have to leave. Therefore, the academy's disciples could not be over 40 years old. Sui Tang spoke a lot. At the beginning, everyone listened attentively, but because there were too many meaningless things, most of them became absent-minded. Only Gu Qiuling straightened his back from the beginning to the end, and did not make any small movements. All right, dismissed. Sui Tang finally announced that the lecture was over. He waved his hand and left. The students did not leave immediately, because for many of them, it was their first time meeting. Naturally, they had to get to know each other. After all, they would be living together for a long time in the future. It was fine if they could not become friends, but they could not become enemies. Some people were smooth and slick, like fish in water, while others were wooden and did not know how to socialize. Ling Han was just about to leave with Huan Shui when he saw Tuoba Tianhuang blocking his path. Want to run? Tuoba Tianhuang said disdainfully. Ling Han shook his head. He had not placed Tuoba Tianhuang in his eyes at all. So after the gathering ended, he had naturally left to focus on tempering his body. He wanted to quickly raise his physical strength to the level of 1,000,000 kilograms, and then break through to the blood transformation realm. He hadn't expected Tuoba Tianhuang to insist on coming over to be slapped in the face. Fine, I'll help you. Make your move. Ling Han placed his right hand behind his back. If you can force me to use my right hand, then I'll consider it your win. Tuoba Tianhuang couldn't help exploding with rage. His eyes glared as if they were about to spit fire. You're too arrogant. He clenched his teeth. Is that so? Ling Han laughed. You've already been defeated by me, so it's not too much for me to use only one hand. Damn it! Tuoba Tianhuang roared in fury as he charged toward Ling Han. Bang! Who would have thought that someone would suddenly appear out of nowhere and block this attack for Ling Han? However, that person was clearly not a match for Tuoba Tianhuang, and he was sent flying. It was Gu Qiuling. If you want to exchange blows with my big brother, you'll first have to pass me. He crawled up, not the slightest cowardice. With this fight, the others all looked over. After knowing the situation, they all laughed and watched the show from the side. The academy didn't prohibit fighting, as long as you didn't kill or cripple someone. But for a meridian opening expert to take the initiative to attack a blood transformation expert was strange. Was he asking for a beating? Furthermore, the other meridian opening expert was also arrogant enough. He actually said he would only use one hand. That was even more shocking. Where did his courage come from? One was arrogant, one was foolish. These two had actually passed the selection and entered the Imperial Capital Academy. That was practically lowering the academy's standard. Tuoba Tianhuang snorted. You're not my match. Break through to the blood transformation realm first. Gu Qiuling still wanted to say something, but he was stopped by Ling Han. He wants to challenge me. Don't steal his business. Ling Han smiled. Gu Qiuling didn't understand. Whose business am I stealing? Who's doing business? He was starting to get serious again. Ling Han ignored him. Instead, he looked at Tuoba Tianhuang and said, Come. Don't tell me you're getting someone to help you again? Tuoba Tianhuang's expression was disdainful. Before Ling Han could reply, someone really did interfere. It was Lian Xuerong. She raised her hand and said, We're all from Hidden Tiger City. We should work together and not fight amongst ourselves. Tuoba Tianhuang was still a bit wary of Lian Xuerong. She was already at the third transformation at such a young age. Although she wasn't as talented as him, she could still be considered a genius. He explained, Flagmaster Lian, I just want to teach him a lesson so he won't be too arrogant. Otherwise, with his flamboyant nature, he'll cause trouble sooner or later. At that time, he'll lose face for Hidden Tiger City. Reading on the phone. Chapter 3269. With Lian Xuerong's intervention, the fight did not happen. Tuoba Tianhuang left hatefully, and even gave Ling Han a disdainful look. He would teach Ling Han a lesson sooner or later. In his eyes, Ling Han was just a flash in the pan. He had already opened all 20 meridians and broken through to the blood transformation realm. But Ling Han was still in the illuminating pulse realm. It should be known that the two of them were about the same level previously, both having opened 3 hidden meridians. The difference was already obvious. Thus, Tuoba Tianhuang no longer saw Ling Han as a competitor. All he wanted was to defeat Ling Han at the same level and completely erase the humiliation from before. Ling Han smiled faintly, not minding it at all. However, he had thought that it would be difficult for the two of them to cross paths again. In the end, they actually lived in the same district. They really would meet frequently. Forget it. At most, I'll just beat him up. He'll be obedient after that. The academy arranged accommodation based on the time of entry. Thus, those living in the same district were both at the blood transformation realm and the illuminating pulse realm. Nanxin district. Those who lived here were basically the older students who had entered 3 years ago. Brother Yang, the new students have arrived today. Should we quickly absorb them into the gang? A green-robed man asked. The person he was asking about was Hu Yang, the boss of the Hu family gang. This Hu family corresponded to one of the 3 dukes of the imperial court, Hu Yinfeng. Although he was not as powerful as the 4 marshals, senior tutor Hong, or the chief of staff, he belonged to the 2nd tier and could not be underestimated. Thus, the Hu family had formed their own faction and did not rely on the 4 marshals or senior tutor Hong. They had strong ambitions and wanted to compete with these strong people in the future. Hu Yang nodded and said, although these people do not have any background, being able to enter the academy means that their talent in martial art is not bad. They have a bright future. After all, we can't compare to the King Kong gang and Hengtian gang. Let's not consider quality for now. Later, we'll first give the new students a show of strength and scare them. Then we'll absorb them into the gang. No one should dare to say no. However, Brother Yang, there's someone from the Hong family among the newcomers, the man in green reminded. A hint of fear flashed in Hu Yang's eyes. He thought of that frightening fellow. He had entered the academy at the age of 13, and by the age of 15, he had already become a celebrity in the academy. By the age of 19, he had already become the #1 expert in the academy, and had also allowed the Hong family to become so strong that they occupied half of the academy. Fortunately, this monstrous genius had long since stepped into the ultimate bone realm and left the academy. Otherwise, the academy would have been the Hong family gang's domain, and no one would be able to compete with them. It's fine. As long as we don't touch Hong Tianliang, it will be fine, Hu Yang said. He paused for a moment, then said, call all the brothers. Let's go. Compared to the 4 great marshals, Grand Tutor Hong, and the elders, the Hu clan could only be considered a rising power. Hu Yinfeng was still at the 5th stage of the extreme bone realm, and was working hard to break through to the engravement realm. He wanted to enter the 1st echelon as soon as possible. Correspondingly, Hu Yang was also working hard to expand the influence of the Hu family in the academy. This was because the disciples that came out of the academy in the future would play a role in various corners of the imperial court. The role of middle-level officials was actually very important. Hu Yang quickly gathered over 10 people. Most of them were at the blood transformation realm, and Hu Yang himself was at the 5th blood transformation. He was already 35 years old. Originally, if he had used his full strength to break through to the ultimate bone realm, he would have already broken through. But after him, there was currently no one in the Hu family who could carry the banner. So he had temporarily slowed down the speed of his breakthrough, doing his best to stay in the academy for a few more days. Under his lead, the 10 people swaggered into the Qingyun region. This was where the new students lived. In the future, there would be many more new students living here, until this place was full. Newcomers come out, shouted the azure-robed man. He was Hu Yang's capable subordinate, and his name was Su Yuliang. His father was also Hu Yinfeng's trusted aide, and he was a few years younger than Hu Yang. If Hu Yang was unable to suppress his realm, and had to break through, then he would temporarily hold up the banner of the Hu family gang. Su Yuliang had a cultivation base of 3 meridians. His roar shook the entire Qingyun region. Who is it? The new students all walked out. They thought the academy was summoning them for some sort of meeting. 10:30-70. More and more people came out. Most of them were completely dumbfounded. Had something happened? Su Yuliang looked over and didn't wait for everyone to arrive. He loudly said, "This is Brother Hu Yang. Those who don't know, listen carefully. Brother Hu Yang's father is one of the three dukes, Hu Yinfeng." Everyone was shocked by his words. They might not have heard of Hu Yang before, but it was impossible for Hu Yinfeng, one of the three ducal ministers, to not know of him. He was an important official of the imperial court and an ultimate bone realm expert. "Newcomers, there are rules you must follow upon entering the academy." Su Yuliang swept his gaze over the crowd. Seeing everyone's faces were filled with reverence, he smiled, enjoying this kind of reverence. "Everyone sit down," he suddenly roared, and the aura of the third transformation surged out, causing the majority of people's faces to turn pale. Everyone sat down, but there were still quite a few who didn't listen. For example, Tuoba Tianhuang and Lian Xuerong. They were both blood transformation existences, so who was afraid of who? As for the Meridian opening realm, there were only Hong Tianliang and Guqioling. Because Ling Han was still cultivating in his room, he acted as if he hadn't heard them. On the other hand, it was Huan Xue who came out with the little pink pig. With her personality, she naturally wouldn't resist. Hong Tianliang disdainfully smiled. Compared to the Hong family, the Hu family wasn't even worth a fart. And the Hu family gang was nothing in front of the Hong family gang. He turned and left. Seeing Hong Tianliang leave, someone else also tried to imitate him, but he was immediately beaten back. That person was unwilling to accept this. "Why can he leave but I can't?" "Because he's Hong Tianliang." That one sentence was enough to force him back. "Oh, looks like my words don't work. Some people don't listen," sneered Su Yuliang. His gaze swept over Lian Xuerong, Tuoba Tianhuang, and the others, but he didn't get angry. He just so happened to need a troublemaker to establish his might. That way, once he flattened these troublemakers, others would naturally feel reverence, and his might would be established. "Boring." Tuoba Tianhuang sneered and turned his head. Su Yuliang immediately leaped forward, pouncing at Tuoba Tianhuang. When he arrived behind him, he spread his fingers, grabbing at his shoulder. Scram! Tuoba Tianhuang snorted and fiercely turned his head. Boom! A terrifying power exploded out. This palm was both fast and fierce. Bang! Su Yuliang was immediately pushed back, and Tuoba Tianhuang was also pushed back. He staggered a few times. Oh! Hu Yang's eyes brightened. He had the information of every new student. With his ability, it naturally wasn't hard for him to obtain it. So he knew that Tuoba Tianhuang was only at the first transformation, and had just broken through. A first transformation could match a third transformation. That wasn't simple. A genius. He was definitely going to have this genius. Chapter 3270. Tuoba Tianhuang had been the top genius in Hidden Tiger City for many years. It was only when Ling Han appeared that he was pushed down. However, it had only been a mere 2 months. He had never lost confidence because of this, and was still as proud as ever. After entering the Emperor Capital Academy, he swore that he would become the second Hong Tianbu, and let all the geniuses regret being born in the same generation as him. Therefore, how could he be afraid of Su Yuliang? The two of them fought fiercely. One was at the third transformation, while the other was at the first transformation. Originally, the gap between them should have been extremely large. Even if victory wasn't decided immediately, it wouldn't take more than 100 moves. But now, more than 100 moves had passed, and the two of them were still fighting fiercely. In fact, it was hard to tell who had the upper hand. Tuoba Tianhuang's talent could be seen at a glance. After all, even though there wasn't a single person that had opened up the hidden meridian, there would surely be no more than 20 in the younger generation. And this was sufficient to allow Tuoba Tianhuang to stand proudly at the peak of the younger generation. Hu Yang waited for a while before finally opening his mouth and saying, "Yuliang, you can withdraw first." Although Su Yuliang was unwilling, he knew that it would be very difficult for him to defeat Tuoba Tianhuang in a short period of time. Although he hadn't activated his blood qi to release a powerful attack, Tuoba Tianhuang was the same as him. He was also in the blood transformation realm, and had an explosive period. At worst, the two of them would just be equal. Furthermore, seeing how monstrous Tuoba Tianhuang was, his eruption might be even more powerful than his own. At that time, he might even be at a disadvantage. Therefore, although he was indignant, he could only step back. Tuoba Tianhuang said proudly, even though he did not defeat Su Yuliang, he was able to fight to a draw with someone at the third transformation. This was enough to show how powerful he was. As expected, the surrounding new students all looked at him with admiration. Even the members of the Hu clan looked at him in a new light. This young man was really strong. His talent could probably be ranked in the top 10 in the blood transformation realm. Clap, clap, clap. Hu Yang applauded and said, "Not bad, not bad, not bad at all. Junior apprentice brother Tuoba is truly a genius in martial art." Tuoba Tianhuang smiled faintly. The Tuoba clan had already been destroyed, and he was the only young man of the Tuoba clan. He shouldered the mission of bringing the clan to greater heights. This put him under great pressure, but at the same time, he did not lose his pride, thinking that he could dominate even in the capital. In his opinion, Hu Yang's praise was a matter of course. It was naturally impossible for it to move him. This caused the corner of Hu Yang's mouth to slightly curl up. It looked like he had to first sharpen this brat's spirit. Otherwise, he would not obediently listen to him. However, there are crouching tigers and hidden dragons in the academy. Junior apprentice brother Tuoba, you are too arrogant. He walked out. I will suppress my cultivation to transformation 1 and spar with you. Tuoba Tianhuang cast him a sideways glance and said, "Don't regret it." Hu Yang smiled and shook his head. "Come, let's spar." Of course, he could not suppress his cultivation to 1 transformation. Even though he had opened 20 meridians, he had no chance of victory. Therefore, he could only suppress his cultivation to the 2nd transformation. No one would be able to tell anyway. Make your move. He beckoned at Tuoba Tianhuang. Tuoba Tianhuang was extremely arrogant. How could he possibly be afraid? He immediately rushed forward. He had some understanding of the academy's situation, so he had his own ambitions. He wanted to make a name for himself. That way, when he left the academy in the future, the lackeys he had subdued here would be able to play a role and contribute to the Tuoba family's resurgence. Hu Yang was a stepping stone for him. The two battled, but Hu Yang's advantage was immediately displayed. He suppressed Tuoba Tianhuang and did not give the other any chance to retaliate. This was an absolute suppression of strength. The new students who had been excited because Tuoba Tianhuang had fought to a draw with the Transformation 3 Transformation senior brother immediately wilted. So, the true senior brother was so powerful, but he did not suspect that Hu Yang had only suppressed his cultivation to Transformation 2. Tuoba Tianhuang also did not expect the other to set a trap for him. He roared angrily and used his ultimate moves, but he was unable to turn the tables. He was defeated in less than 50 moves. Hu Yang did not win easily. He had the advantage of Transformation 1, but he still spent more than 50 moves to defeat the other. This made him think even more highly of this young man. I lost, Tuoba Tianhuang said in a low voice. His expression was very ugly. He had thought that he could sweep through all those of the same cultivation level. He did not expect to be defeated so quickly. You are already very good. After all, even though I have suppressed my cultivation, my insight and battle experience are much higher than yours. After Hu Yang beat him, he also began to feed honey. Follow me. He extended an olive branch. Join my Hu family gang. Not only will no one dare to bully you in the institute, you will also have a vast space for development in the future. Tuoba Tianhuang thought about it and slowly nodded. Firstly, he had indeed lost to Hu Yang. Secondly, he also realized that to rebuild the Tuoba family, he needed to borrow external power. Hu Yang's father was one of the 3 dukes of the court. This backer was strong enough. He might as well borrow power now. When his strength became absolute in the future, the Hu family would naturally suck up to him. Seeing that Tuoba Tianhuang had agreed to join the Hu family gang, Hu Yang was overjoyed. He looked at the other new students and said, "Are you all willing to join the Hu family gang?" Everyone looked at each other. Hu Yang was clearly putting on an expression that said if they did not join, he would beat them up. How could they choose? I am willing. I am willing as well. I am willing. Many people agreed after some consideration. Among the new students this time, other than Hong Tianliang, the others were all born in poverty. Otherwise, they would not have participated in the selection. To them, they really did need to find a backer in the institute, and the Hu family gang was a good choice. But not everyone was willing to be coerced. Lian Xuerong immediately shook her head and said, I have no interest in joining any gang. She turned to leave. Beauty, what's the hurry? Su Yuliang immediately jumped out and blocked Lian Xuerong's path. Move, Lian Xuerong said coldly. She had been a banner master for many years and naturally had an intimidating aura, causing Su Yuliang to choke. But Su Yuliang was also a third transformation expert, and would not be intimidated by another third transformation expert's aura. He revealed a frivolous expression and said, Junior apprentice Sister Lian, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Is there a lover waiting for you inside? Whoosh, a whip lashed out. Su Yuliang retreated and dodged the whip. He licked his lips and said, Oh, it's a rose with thorns. Lian Xuerong held a long whip in her hand, and her expression was solemn. But when matched with her figure and seductive face, this style was incomparably alluring, causing everyone's eyes to stare. Even Hu Yang was no exception. He had not paid much attention to Lian Xuerong in the beginning, but only now did he discover that this delicate flower was extraordinarily enchanting. And it looked like his gains this time were not just a few subordinates. Scram! Lian Xuerong shouted coldly. Chapter 3272. Everyone was shocked. What was going on? Tuoba Tianhuang's attack had been blocked by a meridian opening brat? Who could believe it? Only Lian Xuerong, Gu Qiuling, and Huan Xua's expressions were normal. They had long since known of Ling Han's strength, so they were naturally not surprised. Hu Yang's eyes also brightened. It seemed there really were a few treasures hidden among the new students this time. He was going to have a great harvest. Tuoba Tianhuang, on the other hand, did not feel too shocked. He had only used the power of 400,000 kilograms in this punch, which was slightly more than the power of 150,000 kilograms that he had when he was at 20 meridians. Considering that Ling Han had stopped at 20 meridians for such a long time, it was not impossible that his power had increased a little more. However, 400,000 gene of strength was just a drizzle to him. Ling Han had been able to block his first attack, but could he block a second and a third? At least you didn't make me look down on you too much, said Tuoba Tianhuang indifferently. This time, he looked down on Ling Han from a higher position. Ling Han snorted. You've learned to be a lackey so quickly? Tuoba Tianhuang's expression couldn't help but change. Although he consoled himself by saying that joining the Hu clan gang was only a temporary measure to temporarily borrow the power and reputation of the Hu clan, it couldn't change the fact that it was called the Hu clan gang, not the Tuoba gang. You're still as sharp-tongued as ever, he said coldly. You've spent all your energy on talking. No wonder you haven't broken through to the blood transformation realm. You're just a frog at the bottom of a well. Don't talk to yourself. Ling Han shook his head. Come, make your move. I want to see just how much of my strength you can force out of me. Tuoba Tianhuang almost went crazy from anger. He was only in the blood transformation realm. He was the stronger one. Those words should have been said by him. Truly arrogant. He snorted coldly, and power surged from his feet. Bang, he charged out, punching out. 500,000 gene of strength. He knew that 500,000 gene of strength was the limit of the meridian opening realm. He did not believe that Ling Han could reach such a height. Ling Han casually punched back. He planned to properly teach this Tuoba Tianhuang a lesson today, so he played with him for a bit. Pung! The fist force of the two collided, but once again it was a draw. Tuoba Tianhuang was truly shocked this time. You've actually reached the peak of the meridian opening realm. Ling Han was flabbergasted. When had 500,000 pounds of force been the limit of the meridian opening realm? Where had he heard that from? He shook his head, disinclined to continue explaining. Come again. Today, I'll make you feel despair. When Hu Yang saw this, he was also a bit astonished. This meridian opening realm really gave him a pleasant surprise. To be able to possess 250,000 pounds of force, not only had he opened all the hidden meridians in his body, he had even cultivated his body. It was really hard to imagine that a person from a remote town could actually be a physique cultivator. In reality, it wasn't that body cultivators were impossible. Families at the ultimate bone realm could also afford to buy several packets of medicinal bath materials. The key was that several packets weren't enough. They needed to invest in them endlessly. If one counted this, then those who could truly be called body cultivators were all in the engravement realm. He was also a body cultivator, but in the meridian opening realm, he had only been able to push his strength to 100,000 kilograms. There was no way around it. If he wanted to go any higher, the materials he needed would be far too expensive. Even the Hu family was unable to afford it. Arrogant, I'll let you be arrogant. Tuoba Tianhuang sneered. His physical strength had reached 1,000,000 kilograms, comparable to an ordinary third transformation expert. That was a level that meridian opening experts could only look up to. Who told you to be stubborn? He attacked for the third time, slapping out with his palm. Hong power whistled through the air. This time, he raised his strength to 800,000 jin. He didn't need to use any techniques. He just used his strength to crush his opponent. This kind of victory was the most satisfying. Bam Ling Han also met it with a palm. When their palms collided, a powerful shockwave was created. At the same time, a thunderous sound rang out. It's still a tie. Win. Lose. Hiss. It wasn't just Tuoba Tianhuang. Even Hu Yang and the others were startled. Although they didn't know exactly how much strength Tuoba Tianhuang had used, they knew it had definitely surpassed 200,000 jin. Hu Yang's heart shook. Was he going to encounter a little monster who had reached the peak of meridian opening? Tuoba Tianhuang's expression finally became solemn. That was because 400,000 jin was already close to his limit. But from how Ling Han was acting, it seemed he was still holding back. This was the first time he felt uncertain. It couldn't be that his opponent really could compare to him, right? Just how did this fellow cultivate? Only now did he realize that it wasn't that Ling Han was weaker than him, but that Ling Han had walked even further in the meridian opening realm, reaching a height that he couldn't even imagine. Then let me see just what level you've reached. Tuoba Tianhuang once more charged out. This time, he didn't hold back at all, and he completely unleashed his power. His speed had also reached the speed of sound, and his entire body seemed to be enveloped by a layer of air. Ling Han only unleashed 1,000,000 jin of power to clash with Tuoba Tianhuang. Everyone was dazzled. So the meridian opening realm could be this powerful. As for Hu Yang, he was able to see even more things. Normally, the blood transformation realm needed to reach the third transformation before they could reach the speed of sound. From this, it could be seen that Tuoba Tianhuang was truly a genius. But Ling Han was clearly only in the meridian opening realm. But his speed had also reached the speed of sound. Now that was terrifying. He definitely had to recruit him. Hu Yang thought inside. He had originally thought that he could raise Tuoba Tianhuang into his #1 subordinate. But now it seemed he would have to change that person. Ling Han, I take back my words. You haven't disappointed me. Tuoba Tianhuang laughed, battle intent blazing. He had always wanted to have another fight with Ling Han. Now his wish had finally been fulfilled. Ling Han smiled inside. If he had truly used his full strength, then how could Tuoba Tianhuang have been able to say such grand words? He would have already been beaten to the ground. But his target was Hu Yang. Right now, he naturally wouldn't reveal all his trump cards. The two of them exchanged blows, but their strength was equal. They were both geniuses in martial art, and it was unrealistic for them to rely on techniques to suppress the other. Their battle was incomparably intense, but it was difficult to determine a victor. Hu Yang was incomparably excited. This fellow had reached the peak of the meridian opening realm. Even if his physical strength and secret energy had combined to reach such a height, it was still shocking. He had picked up a treasure. He had picked up a treasure. Receive my cold ice blade again. Tuoba Tianhuang roared. When he once more attacked with his palm, dense white qi coiled around it. The surrounding temperature immediately plummeted. He had used this technique in the Battle of Hidden Tiger City. but now its power had increased by more than 10 times. He was confident that this kind of cold would definitely have a huge effect on Ling Han's body. Even if he only shivered from the cold, it would still be a huge opening in this kind of exchange. Ling Han felt the cold attack, but when it touched his body, it didn't affect him at all. That was because his body was too powerful. Reading on the phone was much more refreshing. Chapter 3273. Though Ling Han hadn't tested his strength for a long time, he believed that his physical strength definitely surpassed 500,000 kilograms. The medicinal bath before, and the red cloud rock afterwards, caused his physique's strength to soar rapidly. Of course, without the indestructible Heaven's Scroll, he couldn't possibly be so fast. But who asked him to be once an invincible paragon, grasping who knew how many techniques, and having broad horizons? Improving cultivation techniques was a small matter. With a stronger physique, his qi and blood would naturally flourish. So how could it be frozen by Tuoba Tianhuang's cold air? You still haven't improved. Ling Han shook his head, swinging his fists continuously, his battle prowess not affected at all. What? Tuoba Tianhuang couldn't accept it. The current cold ice saber was propelled by him, with his blood transformation tier cultivation level, and was more than 10 times stronger than before. This couldn't affect Ling Han at all. Looks like you don't have any new moves. Ling Han revealed a bored expression. Then I won't play with you anymore. Tuoba Tianhuang almost roared. Play with you? Are you playing with me? This was a great humiliation to him. You're still so arrogant, he said darkly. But you've forgotten, what's the strongest point of the blood transformation tier? Hong, his qi and blood surged, and instantly, a terrifying aura surged out of his body, his power skyrocketing. Eat another palm. He propelled his cold ice palm forward. He originally had the strength of 500,000 kilograms, and now with a great burst, it surpassed 2,500,000 kilograms. This was extremely terrifying. Ling Han didn't take it head-on, though he had already grasped Tuoba Tianhuang's attack frequency, and could completely nullify the other's attack. It really wasn't worth it. This wasn't his ultimate opponent. Thus, Ling Han only used the flying shuttle steps, continuously dodging. No one laughed at Ling Han, because most people would choose to dodge when facing the burst of a blood transformation tier, and not face it head-on, unless they had overwhelming power. On the other hand, if Ling Han clearly wasn't a match for Tuoba Tianhuang in terms of power, and still chose to face it head-on, that would really be too stupid. Ling Han did not push the flying shuttle steps to the limit. Instead, he stopped for a moment with each step. He only needed to ensure that he was not struck by Tuoba Tianhuang's attack. Otherwise, even if his physique had improved, it would be impossible for him to last 10 minutes. Yes, he needed a stronger physique. Ling Han thought so. Everyone felt their scalps turn numb as they watched him dodge so easily. So the Meridian Opening Realm could be this powerful. It should be known that Tuoba Tianhuang's current battle prowess was comparable to an ordinary 5th transformation expert. In other words, Ling Han would be able to withstand a few blows from a true 5 changes expert. It must only be a few moves, everyone thought. With his current speed, it was impossible for him to maintain it for too long. However, Ling Han's tenacity exceeded everyone's expectations. 1 minute, 3 minutes, 7 minutes, he was still dodging. Hiss, in another 3 minutes, Tuoba Tianhuang would fall from his berserk state. Tuoba Tianhuang's expression became more and more miserable. His berserk period was not just 10 minutes, but 11 minutes. But the problem was, so what if there was an extra minute? He still had a glimmer of hope. And that was to make use of everyone's mentality, to think that a blood transformation realm expert's berserk period was only 10 minutes. Perhaps Ling Han would relax, and he would be able to succeed in one strike. All right. Fight, fight, fight. The 10 minutes passed very quickly. However, to Tuoba Tianhuang's disappointment, Ling Han did not launch a counterattack. Instead, he continued to pull away. Aren't you being too careful? Tuoba Tianhuang was speechless. Facing such a cautious opponent, his plan would only fail. He was speechless. How could this kid have so much battle experience? He did not seem like an 18 or 19-year-old youth at all. He was simply a veteran warrior, who had experienced hundreds of battles. This was natural. Ling Han had experienced countless battles in the Yuan world. Scheming against him? Hee. Once Tuoba Tianhuang's berserk period was over, Ling Han launched a counterattack. He still did not use too much power. He was only slightly stronger than Tuoba Tianhuang. He seized the opportunity and gave Tuoba Tianhuang a blow. This did not affect Tuoba Tianhuang's ability to continue fighting. But after being hit by a meridian opening realm expert, did he still have the face to continue fighting? His face was filled with disappointment. His confidence had been shattered into pieces. He had the advantage of a major realm, and his blood qi was boiling. If he still could not take down Ling Han after such a great explosion, would he still have the face to appear in front of Ling Han? Clap, clap, clap. Hu Yang began to applaud. Wonderful, truly wonderful. Ling Han looked at him and said, "You were the one who injured Flag Lord Lian, right?" Lian Xuerong was at the third transformation. Even in the entire academy, there were not many who could defeat her. Just a spar, Hu Yang said indifferently. Ling Han, right? I have high hopes for you. Among the younger generation of the Imperial City, there are not many who have reached the first limit of the opening pulse tier. And you are probably the only one who has not broken through to the blood transformation tier. Even if you flatter me, you won't be able to escape the result of being beaten up by me. Ling Han indifferently said. He only fought with Tuoba Tianhuang because he hated him for not fighting for himself and helping outsiders bully his own people. But it was different against Hu Yang. He had injured Lian Xuerong. With Ling Han's protective nature, there was no way he would let him off. Hu Yang's expression darkened. He had high hopes for Ling Han, but that did not mean he could let Ling Han walk all over his head and behave atrociously. This thorn definitely had to be ground. Otherwise, even if he was lured into the Hu clan with benefits, he would still become a source of trouble in the future. Ling Han, you really are too arrogant, he said indifferently. Only those who don't have strength are arrogant. Those who have strength are confident. Ling Han smiled. Come. Do you also want to suppress your realm and fight with me? Fine. I'll let you lose wholeheartedly, Hu Yang said casually. I'll also fight with you at the first transformation. Bang! Ling Han stomped down and instantly exploded with astonishing speed. He punched out at Hu Yang. Hu Yang also punched out. His realm was so high, and there was no way he could dodge Ling Han's attack. Bam! The sound was like thunder, and energy shot out. Hu Yang was pushed back 7 steps, his face full of shock. What? Hu Yang was actually not a match for Ling Han? Although everyone knew that Hu Yang had suppressed his cultivation, he was so strong. As long as his realm was above Ling Han's, he should not have been a match for him. Only Hu Yang himself knew just how much power he had used in that punch. He had actually suppressed his power to the second transformation, and his second transformation's power was enough to reach about 1,200,000 kilograms. But against Ling Han, he was completely no match for him. This guy had been holding back when he was fighting with Tuoba Tianhuang. Fuck, he had purposely set a trap for him. Hu Yang's expression was dark. Was this really a young man who had walked out from a remote and desolate place? This scheming was too deep. Simply black-bellied. He took a deep breath and said, So your true power has surpassed the first limit, and even far surpassed it. What first limit? Tuoba Tianhuang was puzzled, and so he asked the Hu clan members beside him for guidance. When the other simply explained the 2 limits of 5 million kilograms and 2 million kilograms, he could not help but be shocked and sink into even deeper despair. So, he really was a frog at the bottom of a well. To think that he had thought that he was only slightly inferior to Ling Han. Chapter 3274. Ling Han smiled slightly and said, If I didn't have some ability, wouldn't I be eaten up by you scum until not even my bones were left? How would I be able to beat a vicious dog? He did not show any mercy with his words, and his words were truly vicious. Save face for what? The other had come to bully them, and had even beaten Lian Xuerong. This matter could not be resolved peacefully. Hu Yang's expression became even uglier. Although he also knew that geniuses were all arrogant, but arrogance was arrogance. Which one had such a vicious mouth like Ling Han? Too inconsiderate. Your mouth doesn't have a filter. Let me properly discipline you." He leapt out, attacking towards Ling Han. This time, his strength had increased to 1,500,000 jin. What suppression to a cultivation level of 1 change pay. Ling Han met him head-on. Pung! The two of them once again collided, and a wave of power transformed into a ripple visible to the naked eye, shaking out in all directions. Hu Yang's figure swayed, and he retreated another 3 steps, while Ling Han stood steadily, not moving. This time, Hu Yang was truly moved. Fuck! 1,500,000 jin of strength was still not enough to suppress Ling Han? This brat's strength had most likely reached 1,600,000. Too terrifying. He suddenly had a thought. Would this person become the second Hong Tianbu? Back then, that person had reached a mighty strength of 1 million jin in the opening pulse tier. And thus began his legend, becoming the nightmare of everyone who had been in the same period as him. Fortunately, because that person was too monstrous, he had only stayed in the academy for a few years. If Ling Han became the second Hong Tianbu, then wouldn't he have to live under an endless shadow once more? No, a monster like Hong Tianbu could only appear once in this world. There would not be a second, or else it would really be too hard for people to live. The second limit of the opening pulse tier. Only Hong Tianbu could reach it. Hu Yang gave a loud roar, and once again increased his strength. 2 million jin of strength. This would definitely be enough to suppress him. Pung! The two of them clashed again. This time, Ling Han was indeed no match for him. His figure swayed and he retreated again and again, but he was not injured at all. Ling Han's strength was about 1,600,000 kilograms. Then in the exchange of blows, he would have to suffer a force of 400,000 kilograms. However, to his current physique, this was already not too much of a burden. He could completely endure it. At the very least, a few attacks would not be a problem. Brother Yang, good job. Compared to our brother Yang, you're just trash. The people of the Hu family gang all waved their flags and shouted, cheering for Hu Yang. Previously, Hu Yang had suffered losses again and again, causing them to feel very depressed. Now they could finally cheer to their heart's content. Good Xiuling found it strange and said, "What's there to be proud of when a 5th blood transformation cultivator suppresses a meridian opening cultivator?" He was a straightforward young man. If he had any questions, he would naturally ask them immediately. All of a sudden, all the shouting stopped. Yeah, so what if he had the upper hand? What was there to be proud of? A 5th transformation realm cultivator, bullying a meridian opening realm cultivator. Hu Yang gritted his teeth. In any case, he was already shameless. What else was there to worry about? He no longer held back and went all out. When he was in the meridian opening realm, he had opened 20 meridians. His secret strength was as high as 400,000 kilograms. Coupled with the body technique that he cultivated, his limit was 600,000 kilograms. It was not easy at all. Now that he had entered the 5th blood transformation, his secret strength was as high as 5 million kilograms. Although his physical strength did not increase much, because the materials needed for body cultivation were too expensive, it had reached 600,000 kilograms. Although the two could not reach a perfect state, it was still as high as 5 million kilograms. It was almost 50% more than an ordinary 5th blood transformation. And this was still under the condition that his blood and qi were not boiling. Otherwise, his physical strength could reach around 3 million kilograms. But his physical strength could not be doubled by his blood and qi. However, under the pressure of 3 million kilograms of force, a punch from him would definitely cause Ling Han to explode. Of course, he did not dare to kill Ling Han. Firstly, the two of them did not have such a deep hatred. Secondly, he wanted to recruit Ling Han. Thirdly, if he killed him, the academy would punish him severely. 1 million kilograms of force was more than enough. Brat, don't be too arrogant. You have to know that there are always people stronger than you. He laughed and punched out at Ling Han. Ling Han did not clash head-on with him. His feet shifted as he tried to familiarize himself with Hu Yang's strength. Occasionally he would send out a punch. Even Hu Yang did not dare to take 1 million kilograms of force head-on. Seeing that Ling Han and Hu Yang were exchanging blows, And then thinking about how he himself had been defeated by Hu Yang after only 50 moves, Tuoba Tianhuang's expression was extremely dark. With every extra glance he took, he felt as if his confidence was being sapped away a little more. 100 exchanges, 200 exchanges. The two of them were still fighting, and Hu Yang gradually lost his patience. He was a fifth blood transformation expert. If he was unable to defeat a meridian opening expert after so long, he would lose all face. He began to increase his power to 2.5 million kilograms. Ling Han instantly felt pressured. Such a violent blast of power brought about an incredibly terrifying gust of wind, which affected his movements. He planned to counterattack. After fighting for so long, he had already grasped Hu Yang's attack frequency. Just as he was about to punch, a light suddenly flashed through his mind. This was related to the flying shuttle steps. He had long since grasped this footwork technique, but there were a few mantras that he had always felt were a bit strange. They seemed a bit inappropriate or even redundant. But now he had grasped the inspiration. So that was how it was. He suddenly laughed loudly. He was like a willow in the wind, swaying gently. His entire body even seemed to fly, stepping on the air like a flying immortal. Everyone was dumbfounded. They had never seen such a battle before. Someone could actually fly in the air. Hu Yang was also stunned. Ling Han could fly. Fuck, then how was he supposed to fight? If he couldn't win, he could just fly into the air. How was he supposed to chase him? But he was still a fifth blood transformation expert, and he immediately grasped the subtleties. So Ling Han did not really know how to fly. Instead, he was like a kite, borrowing the power of his attacks to fly. The power of 2.5 million kilograms was, of course, large enough to completely support the weight of a person. This was like a violent wave that could even capsize a large ship. But humans could conquer the huge wave and steer it forward with only a surfboard. Now, Ling Han was stepping on his force wave and had achieved soaring success. But the problem was, even if he knew this, he could not imitate it. Because the force was chaotic, it was like many waves were crashing over, and it was very easy to be knocked over. Therefore, it was possible for him to borrow one stream of energy, but it was impossible for him to borrow 10 or 100 streams of energy. Come down! Hu Yang shouted. His punches became irregular. He wanted to disrupt Ling Han's rhythm and make him fall from the sky. However, Ling Han moved with the wind and was still as light as a feather. It was as if he had become a piece of paper. No matter how strong the wind was, it could blow away houses, but it could not tear a piece of paper. Ling Han's control over his power had already reached the pinnacle of perfection. Chapter 3276. What did Ling Han mean by saying that out of the blue? The eruption of the blood transformation realm only lasted for 10 minutes. It turned out that Ling Han had only been talking to him to stall for time. His intention was to waste the explosive period of his blood chi boiling. Fuck, how can you be so treacherous? How can you be so careless, shameless, too shameless? Hu Yang was so angry that he was completely speechless. You are a genius, and we are from the same academy, yet you actually used such a dirty trick. However, aren't you a little too confident? Even if I can't boil my blood chi, how can you be my opponent? Shameless bastard. Do you really think that I can't deal with you just because I don't have my explosive power? He said in a sinister voice. He still possessed nearly 1 million kilograms of strength, which was almost twice as much as Ling Han. This doubling of strength was not as simple as two people joining hands. Although Ling Han's movement technique was light, he did not have to use his strength. It was not like he could not afford to waste time. If you don't apologize to senior apprentice Sister Lian, I'll beat you until you do. Ling Han attacked Hu Yang. Only now did everyone understand what Ling Han meant with his words just now. All of them thought to themselves that this person was truly black-bellied. He actually thought of using such a method to exhaust Hu Yang's trump card. But thinking about it again, Ling Han was only in the meridian opening realm. It was not fair for him to fight Hu Yang. Was he really going to stupidly fight him head-on? He was forced to use such a move. Besides, Hu Yang was the one who stopped. Who could he blame? Boom boom boom. Ling Han and Hu Yang battled fiercely. This time, Hu Yang did not explode with power. Although he still held an absolute advantage in terms of power against Ling Han's lightning-quick movement technique, this excess power could not play a decisive role. In other words, if Hu Yang did not use his ultimate move, he would never be able to defeat Ling Han. Of course, it was the same the other way around. The initiative was still in Hu Yang's hands. Soon, that would not be the case, Ling Han said in his heart. He grasped Hu Yang's attack frequency, then activated the Monkey King's cultivation method, and fiercely punched out. This was the Demon Monkey Fist. When executed in the hands of the current Ling Han, it was as if he had transformed into an ancient demon monkey, capable of destroying the heavens and suppressing the earth. In addition to the stacking of 20 layers of strength, it possessed an incomparably terrifying destructive prowess. Moreover, this strength overlay was adjusted according to Hu Yang's attack frequency. Hu Yang's attack met it head-on, but the power disintegrated layer by layer, as if it existed in name only. Bam! Ling Han punched, and Hu Yang's entire body was sent flying. At that moment, the whole place fell silent. In a head-on confrontation, an opening meridian had sent a fifth transformation expert flying. Even though Hu Yang had not used boiling blood qi, this was still an unbelievable miracle. Hu Yang was sent flying. He landed heavily on the ground, but he immediately got up. His expression changed drastically. He had actually been sent flying by Ling Han. This was not because he had underestimated his opponent, but in a head-on confrontation, there was no doubt that by tomorrow, this matter would spread throughout the institute, and he would become a complete laughingstock. In the future, he would also become the first supporting character in Ling Han's legend. No, he could not be defeated. He did not want to be this kind of antagonist. He spat out a mouthful of blood. That attack just now had indeed injured him. But he was after all in the fifth transformation. This kind of attack was not enough to seriously injure him. Hu Yang's arms spread open, and both of his hands turned into claws. Black light flashed on his fingertips. Ling Han shuddered. His opponent had used a martial technique. Just think of the Demon Monkey Fist. This could stack up to 108 layers of strength. How shocking was its power! You should be proud to be able to force me to use the Claw of Annihilation, Hu Yang said darkly. Ling Han cracked his knuckles, making crisp cracking sounds. He was not afraid of this battle. Annihilation Myriad. Hu Yang leapt forward and pressed out with his claw. It formed multiple shadows that pressed towards Ling Han. Ling Han used the Demon Monkey Fist to meet Hu Yang's attack. Bang! Fist and palm collided, and a thunderous sound exploded. Ling Han's body shook, and he staggered backwards. He raised his hand and saw that there were a few bloody holes on his fist. Although they did not penetrate deep into his flesh, they had already touched his bones. The power of this claw was shocking. Ling Han shook his hand. Luckily, his bones were hard. Otherwise, it was very likely that his bones would have been broken. As expected, it was very powerful. You have no idea what price I paid to learn the Claw of Annihilation, Hu Yang said proudly. Starting from the age of 5, I stuck my fingers into a box filled with metal spikes every day. Do you know how painful that was? After each time, I soaked my fingers in medicine to quickly heal the wounds. But although the wounds healed, the pain remained. Just like that, day after day, year after year. I practiced for a total of 22 years. Ling Han smiled faintly. Not bad, your perseverance is not bad. From his perspective, in the origin world, who would not spend tens of thousands, or even hundreds of millions of years to practice a martial art? Hu Yang only used 22 years, and it was actually not that bad. It could not be helped. In this world, martial art had just begun to flourish, and the lifespan of the blood-changing realm was only about 200 years. Hu Yang was very displeased with Ling Han's reply. He snorted and said, "You seem to think otherwise. Then let me show you the true power of the Claw of Annihilation." He charged over, his claws dancing, and launched a fierce attack towards Ling Han. Since he knew the power of the Claw of Annihilation, Ling Han of course would not take it head-on. Instead, he used the flying shuttle steps, and his figure floated as he continuously dodged. He sighed inwardly. His body refinement had not reached perfection. Otherwise, why would he be afraid of the Claw of Annihilation? "Do you think that I will not be able to do anything to you?" Just because you have increased the distance between us? Hu Yang smirked coldly. Shwa, shwa, shwa. He continued to strike out with his claws. His chi shot out, forming multiple claws that could be seen with the naked eye. This was the claw of annihilation. Even if it was just the energy it sent out, it was filled with destructive power. Ling Han's figure swayed as he dodged his opponent's attacks. He punched out with his demon monkey fist, taking advantage of the openings his opponent had revealed to counterattack. However, the two of them had already pulled away. With their speed, the chances of their attacks hitting each other were extremely low. The two of them continued to clash like this. It looked like neither of them could do anything to the other. But both of them were clear that this battle had now become a battle of endurance. Whoever could last longer would obtain victory. Who could have imagined this? A meridian opening realm could actually force a 5 transformation expert to this extent. Speaking of which, Hu Yang really was wronged. If he had used the claw of annihilation when his blood chi was boiling, then it would have been impossible for Ling Han to dodge. That attack speed was just too fast. Thinking of this, the crowd couldn't help but say that Ling Han was two-faced. However, there was no way the secret energy reserves of a meridian opening realm expert could compare to a 5 transformation expert. The final result would definitely be Hu Yang's victory. Chapter 3277. A Beautiful Romance. However, the result greatly exceeded everyone's expectations. Ling Han could endure very well, to the point that a certain person started to despair. Hu Yang found that he was the first to be unable to endure. Activating the Claw of Destruction took a great toll on him. Normally speaking, he had to succeed in 10 minutes, which was about the same as the blood energy boil. But now, Ling Han had already lasted for 15 minutes. Hu Yang instantly felt great pressure. He was almost unable to maintain the activation of the Claw of Destruction. If this continued, he would lose. He was shocked. Before this, how could he have thought that he would lose to an opening pulse realm? Only one person had ever accomplished such a feat, Hong Tianbu. Was he really going to become a supporting character in contrast to Ling Han? One had to know that the 5 transformations that had lost to Hong Tianbu was a great joke. Even though Hong Tianbu was like the sun in the sky right now, no one thought highly of him. He did not want to be the second. But what great move could he use? This time, he had come to trample on the spirit of the new students, and also to take in some subordinates. He naturally could not make any preparations, and bring along seal soldiers or talismans. Due to this, he did not even have a trump card to turn the tables. What to do, what to do? Lightning flashed through Hu Yang's mind, but he could not think of any way to turn defeat into victory. Stop, he shouted loudly. But Ling Han would not pay attention to him. His figure continued to move, his fists swinging, giving Hu Yang great pressure. This brat, how could he not have any face? Hu Yang shouted loudly and said, "This young master is not feeling well today. I will fight you again in the future." He had used the blood energy boil, so if he could use it again, it would be easy to suppress Ling Han. A gentleman's revenge was never too late. Moreover, if they continued to fight, it was possible that he would be beaten up by Ling Han. He believed that Ling Han was capable of doing such a thing. He turned and ran. Using the speed of sound, he instantly disappeared. Ran. The people of the Hu family gang were all gaping. Their boss had abandoned the battle and run. That was too inconceivable. His opponent was just a meridian opening expert. The expressions of those who knew about Hong Tianbu changed drastically. They thought of a possibility. Perhaps a second Hong Tianbu would appear in the academy, covering the sky with one hand, causing everyone to only be able to look up to him. Tuoba Tianhuang gritted his teeth, and his expression was very ferocious. He had been easily defeated by Hu Yang, but Ling Han had been able to force Hu Yang to flee. Although it was because Ling Han had used a scheme, it was still undeniable that there was a huge gap between the two of them. Did he deserve to be called a genius in front of Ling Han? No, he was not satisfied. He wanted to become stronger. If he couldn't defeat Ling Han at the 5 transformations, then he would rush to the ultimate bone realm. If the ultimate bone realm still wasn't enough, then he would go to the engravement realm. He believed that as long as he had a suppressive advantage in terms of cultivation base, no matter how strong Ling Han's battle prowess was, he would eventually lose. After Hu Yang left, the members of the Hu family gang paused for a moment, then naturally left one after another. Who still dared to provoke Ling Han? Ling Han didn't take advantage of his victory to chase after Hu Yang. He didn't even look at Tuoba Tianhuang. Instead, he walked to Lien Shuerong's side and said, "Flag Master Lien, are you all right?" "I'm fine." Lien Shuerong nodded. Hu Yang had seen that she was beautiful to the bone, and some sort of evil thought had been aroused in him. He naturally couldn't bear to heavily injure her. "Thank you, Ling Han," she said seriously. She really hadn't expected that in such a short period of time, the youth she had brought from a truly remote and desolate place had already blossomed with limitless brilliance, even leaving her in the dust. It had to be known that Ling Han was only at the Meridian Opening Realm. If he stepped into the Blood Transformation Realm, just how strong would he be? Could it be that he really could stand shoulder to shoulder with that white-robed, omnipotent person? Lien Shuerong was a little absent-minded. There had always been a person in her heart who was like a deity, but now, this person was becoming dim. After all, she had only seen him from afar, and had mostly only heard of his legends. He wasn't like Ling Han, who was alive and well, and had even stood up for her. "Flag Master Lien, rest well," Ling Han said. He had to continue refining his body. This was the most important matter. A day later, the news of Hu Yang being beaten to the point of fleeing by Ling Han had already spread throughout the academy, instantly causing a huge uproar. Hu Yang was not an ordinary person at the 5 transformations, but was a genius who had once cultivated to the limits of the Meridian Opening Realm. He had also cultivated in body techniques, and now possessed a mighty strength of nearly 3 million jin. Yet he had actually been defeated by Ling Han. Hiss, why did this sound so familiar? Hong Tian's steps, a figure flashed across everyone's heart. This was a miracle that only Hong Tian's steps could create. In just one day, Ling Han's reputation had risen, while Hu Yang's had fallen to the bottom of the valley. However, in the eyes of the true overlords of the academy, Ling Han could only be considered to have just risen. The rumors are too exaggerated. What Hong Tian steps number 2, hehe. Xianyuan Dingwa laughed. He was the son of one of the 4 great commanders, Great Commander Xianyuan. Great Commander Xianyuan was also the only one of the 4 great commanders with a surname as his title. Beside him, a young man stood solemnly. Hearing this, he also laughed and said, "Although Hu Yang can't be called a peak expert, his strength isn't weak either. To be able to beat him away, that junior brother surnamed Ling does have some ability. And he's very black-bellied." Xianyuan Dingwa laughed loudly. To actually let Hu Yang waste the opportunity of his blood qi boil, in a muddle-headed manner. This matter is what will make Hu Yang a joke for the rest of his life. Another young man also laughed. Fortunately, it wasn't a battle of life and death. Otherwise, Hu Yang's name would go down in history. His name was Bei Hegi, and he was Xianyuan Dingwa's right-hand man. The old man of the Bei family was also a general under Great Commander Xianyuan, and he was extremely brave. Xianyuan Dingwa tapped his fingers and said seriously, "However, to be able to beat someone at the 5 blood transformations at the Illuminating Pulse realm, no matter how you look at it, our junior brother Ling is very powerful. His potential is astonishing, and he's worth nurturing." "You think highly of him?" Bei Hegi asked. "Hehe, the Hong Tian steps has been invincible for too long. If there's a second Hong Tian steps, wouldn't that be a little more interesting?" Xianyuan Dingwa laughed. Bei Hegi was surprised. Although our junior brother has already displayed extremely monstrous strength, there's only one Hong Tian steps. In the entire world, there was only one Hong Tian steps. This was because his talent could no longer be described as genius or monstrous. It could suppress the heavens, and there could only be one such person. "It's fine. Let's make friends first, and we'll see in the future," Xianyuan Dingwa said. "Make a trip on my behalf, and convey the goodwill of the Xianyuan family." Okay. Bei Hegi didn't say anything else. Since Xianyuan Dingwa had already made his decision, he could only carry it out. This was how a qualified subordinate should be. His eyes were filled with respect. Actually, Xianyuan Dinghua was also an amazing genius, but the people of this generation had been suppressed too badly by the Hongtian steppes. No matter how brilliant you were, in front of the Hongtian steppes, you were like the light of a firefly. How could you compete with the brilliance of the sun? He sighed in his heart. Even that junior brother Ling was the same. Now that the Hongtian steppes was in power, any genius could only be overshadowed. Chapter 3278. After a night, Hu Yang had completely recovered to his peak condition. In other words, he could boil his blood energy at any time and explode with his strongest battle prowess. He immediately wanted to find Ling Han and teach Ling Han a lesson to vent his anger. But he quickly received news that many people had come to visit Ling Han this morning, such as Bei Hegi and Lu Shiming. Who was Bei Hegi? He was Xianyuan Dinghua's right-hand man. Him going to see Ling Han was definitely not a private matter, but a representation of Xianyuan Dinghua's will. And Lu Shiming? He was Qin Shingho's subordinate, and Qin Shingho was the 7th grandson of the Vajra general. Hu Yang immediately had misgivings. If he went to Ling Han's residence to beat someone up, it would be a slap to Xianyuan Dinghua and Qin Shingho's faces. Although Hu Yang's expansion of the Hu clan would inevitably cause conflict with the Xianyuan gang and Qin Shingho, that was just a small conflict between his subordinates. It wouldn't reach their level. If they really fought head-on, both the Xianyuan gang and the Qin gang could easily beat the Hu clan into a sorry state. Offending both at the same time? Haha. Therefore, impulsively running over and directly attacking was not feasible. However, it was absolutely impossible for Hu Yang to swallow this insult. Then I'll issue him a challenge. Hu Yang had an idea. If Ling Han accepted the challenge, then he could beat up Ling Han during the fight. Even Xianyuan Dinghua and Qin Shingho couldn't say anything. If Ling Han didn't accept, then he could naturally recover his fallen reputation. Look, beating Hu Yang away? It was all nonsense. Yes, this idea was not bad. He immediately sent someone to send a letter to challenge Ling Han. Ling Han was in the middle of body tempering when Summoned Snow received the letter of challenge. Hu Yang wants to challenge me. He couldn't help but laugh. What kind of joke was this? A 5 transformation expert wanted to challenge a mere illuminating pulse cultivator like him? He only needed to think for a moment to understand Hu Yang's intentions. To respond or not to respond. Ling Han glanced at the letter of challenge and couldn't help but reveal a wisp of surprise. Because it said that for the sake of fairness, Ling Han was allowed to use any immortal artifact or talisman soldier. But the problem was, with Ling Han's current status, what kind of Dharma artifact or talisman soldier could he get that could unleash the power of the 5th transformation and above? This was naturally Hu Yang pretending to be generous. Ling Han connected his photon computer to the Academy's main photon computer and searched for some information. This was the Academy's internal network, and only the Academy students had the qualifications to access it. They could search for information about the Academy, including cultivation techniques and martial techniques. Ling Han was looking for the weapon nurturing tree. Half his eyes lit up. The weapon nurturing tree grew in the Academy, and there was a beast watching it. It was obvious that the Academy owned it, so there was a high chance that it would have the relevant information. When the weapon nurturing leaf was fully grown, it could be used as an engravement realm talisman soldier. However, it could still be used if it was not fully grown, but its power would be slightly weaker. How to tell? Lu Sheng looked at the veins on the weapon nurturing leaf. 4 veins meant that it had fully grown and was an engravement realm talisman soldier. 3 veins meant the extreme of the extreme bone realm. 2 veins meant the blood transformation realm, and 1 vein meant the illuminating pulse realm. Ling Han took out his 13 leaves and examined them. He found that 9 of them had 3 veins, and the remaining 4 had 2 veins. He couldn't help but smile. This was going to be interesting. Ling Han told Huanxue to send a reply. They could spar, but they needed to add a stake, in other words, a bet. He took out the pills that he had refined over the past few days. There were hundreds of them, and their value was shocking. Since he had to use up a weapon nurturing leaf, it was not worth it to just beat someone up. Ling Han was not such a wasteful person. He was not afraid of the academy finding out, because this matter could not be hidden. However, no one from the academy had come looking for him over the past 2 days, which was probably a tacit approval of his success. He had stolen it with his ability. Now this ball was thrown back to Huyang. This brat actually agreed. Huyang was shocked. He had thought that Ling Han would admit defeat. Did he want to embarrass himself in front of everyone? Oh, he understood now. The problem was with the stakes. This brat wanted to use the stakes to scare him off. Indeed, the value of a few hundred pulse-probing pills was shocking. But he was the son of one of the 3 dukes, Hu Yinfeng. He could still afford this bit of wealth. He agreed. When the news spread that Ling Han was going to fight Huyang in 3 days, it immediately caused another uproar in the academy. Of course, Huyang was going to fight. He had lost so much face that he definitely had to get it back. But why did Ling Han accept the challenge? He already had a huge amount of glory. What was the point of fighting Huyang again? Furthermore, most people knew that Huyang had lost because he had wasted the opportunity to use his blood qi to boil. If they fought again, Ling Han's chances of winning were pitifully small. No, it should be 0. Everyone was puzzled. Lien Xuerong had specially come to find Ling Han and asked him to cancel the fight. But Ling Han had already decided to use the weapon nurturing leaf to fix Huyang. Naturally, he would not agree. Last time, he had only beaten Huyang away. He had not yet fulfilled his promise to beat him up. In these 3 days, Ling Han diligently cultivated. Now he only lacked physical arts. And because of the large amount of red cloud stones, he was confident that he could reach the limit of physical arts in 10 days. 10 days later, he would reach the blood-changing tier. He was filled with anticipation. After reaching the blood-changing tier, he might not be able to send the Empress and the others out, but at least he would be able to communicate with them. 2 days later, Ling Han went to the academy's training field to test his strength. There was a strength measuring machine here. The limit was as high as 10 million kilograms. And this was also the limit of all the strength measuring machines. Any stronger than that could not be measured. Ling Han did not want others to know his background, so he was very low-key. He did not even bring his little servant girl. Let's test my secret power first. He had originally thought that the limit of his secret power was 1,000,000 kilograms. But after the fight at the Hu clan, he found out that his secret power limit had actually exceeded 1,000,000 kilograms. And Hu Yang's surname was also Hu. Did he have a grudge with someone with the surname Hu? He punched the strength measuring machine, and the number immediately appeared. 1,500,000 kilograms. Ling Han was shocked. It was said that the limit of the illuminating meridian was 1,000,000 kilograms of secret power and 1,000,000 kilograms of physical strength. After the two were perfectly combined, the limit could reach 2,000,000 kilograms. This was the second extreme of the illuminating meridian. Currently, only Hongtian steps had reached it. But his secret power had reached 1,500,000 kilograms. Although it was not much, only 10%. But in a fight between experts, would they be able to afford a difference of 10%? He tested his physical strength again. Pung, the strength measuring machine trembled, and the number changed again. 6,000,000 kilograms. And the total value was 1,500,000 kilograms. In other words, the secret power and physical strength had not been perfectly combined, and there was a huge waste. It could not be helped. These few days, he had been focused on cultivating his physical arts. Naturally, he did not have time to combine the secret power. This is not urgent. Now, I just need to increase my strength. Ling Han's improvement in his physical arts was very obvious. Although the increase in his physique could not be seen directly, the increase in physical strength was real. He could almost increase his strength by 100,000 kilograms in a day. A night passed, and the day of the battle arrived. Chapter 3280. Ling Han returned to his residence and continued his seclusion. For him, the conflict with Hu Yang was only a small interlude. His journey was the sea of stars. So how could he keep an eye on such a small character? He focused on refining his body, striving to reach the consummate level of illuminating pulse as soon as possible and break through to blood-changing tier. The Academy's evaluation of him, on top of being powerful, added the word two-faced. He really cheated too much, defeating Hu Yang with the seal soldier, causing him to lose face and wealth. Ling Han was also displeased. He wasted a ultimate bone tier seal soldier for this. Was that something 5 million Xianbei coins could be exchanged for? However, severely injuring Hu Yang finally helped Lin Shuerong vent her anger, and Ling Han still felt it was worth it. He closed the door and refused to meet guests, focusing on refining his body. The little female attendant didn't waste the Academy's resources, attending classes every day, and was rapidly improving her cultivation. Ling Han's physique was rapidly improving, and the indestructible Heaven Scroll was displaying an astonishing effect. Limited by Ling Han's cultivation level, he could not possibly think of cultivation techniques for the blood transformation tier and the extreme bone tier out of thin air. But for those in the illuminating meridian tier, this was definitely a rare and valuable body refining technique. After all, this was the product of billions of years. Another 6 days passed, and Ling Han's physique reached its limit, unable to improve any further. Reaching a bottleneck, no matter how he bathed in medicine or used Red Cloud Rock, his power wouldn't improve, and his physique didn't change at all. He tested it with the strength measuring machine, and his physical strength similarly reached 1,100,000 kilograms. If the two were combined, it would reach 2 million kilograms, the second limit of illuminating pulse tier. Ling Han wasn't in a hurry to break through to blood-changing tier, as he still hadn't perfectly combined the two powers. Since he was already late for so many days, a few more days wouldn't make a difference. His foundation had to be solid. For a great master of martial art like him, combining powers was naturally a small matter. In just 2 days, he had perfectly combined the two powers, 2,200,000 kilograms. Ling Han was very satisfied with himself. This shouldn't be weaker than Hong Tian's step. However, it was said that Hong Tian's step had 2 million kilograms of power in illuminating pulse tier. But was it a round number? Perhaps it was 2,100,000. Or even 2,200,000. I shouldn't be arrogant and complacent. Ling Han was just about to break through to the blood transformation realm when he received another challenge from Hu Yang. He couldn't help but have a strange expression on his face. Was this guy getting braver with each setback, or was he addicted to beating him up? This time, Hu Yang's challenge was very clear. In the battle between the two of them, they were not allowed to use any talisman weapons or talismans. He couldn't help but laugh. This Hu Yang was really shameless. Someone at the 5 changes of blood transformation actually wanted a fair battle in the meridian opening realm. Just how thick-skinned was he? Fine, I'll beat him into submission this time. Ling Han had Huanxue reply. Battle. However, the time was set for 3 days later. 3 days should be enough for him to reach the blood transformation realm. When the news spread, the Academy was in an uproar. This Hu Yang was really thick-skinned. The first time he fled. The second time he was directly knocked down. Now that he had just recovered from his injuries, he wanted to challenge again. No matter who won or lost, Hu Yang's reputation would definitely be ruined. Of course, if he just endured it like this, then it would definitely be even worse. The Hu family gang might instantly disband. Who would be willing to follow such a cowardly boss? So, no matter how shameless people scolded him, Hu Yang had to fight with Ling Han again and obtain victory. If he were to lose for the 3rd time, he would lose all his face and everything else. Looking at Hu Yang's restrictions, everyone agreed that this time he definitely could not lose. Not being able to use talisman weapons, then they could only rely on true battle power. It had to be said that both times Ling Han won, he had used tricks, and could even be said to be treacherous and two-faced. So, after learning his lesson, Hu Yang definitely would not repeat the same mistake. Ling Han ignored the opinions of the crowd. He focused on breaking through to the blood transformation realm. 3 days later, he would fairly defeat Hu Yang. He went into seclusion to break through to the blood transformation realm. In reality, he had already comprehended this long ago. It was just that deep in his heart, he had an obsession for perfection, so he had always stopped himself from taking this step. Now that his heart was no longer obstructed, he naturally succeeded. His body was undergoing a complete change. His meridians were widening, his cells were strengthening, and his bones were becoming stronger. The blood transformation realm was not just a change in the blood. That was just a sign, a characteristic. However, these changes had only been going on for a while before Ling Han felt a strong sense of weakness. The essence of his life was increasing, but without external replenishment, he could only burn his own life source. Naturally, this was a kind of great injury. Ling Han hurriedly took out the Phoenix King jade fruit he had prepared and ate one. Immediately his body felt warm. His life source had been replenished, and he could continue to evolve without worrying about his life source being damaged or even exhausted. This time, he had accumulated a lot of experience, so his evolution was incomparably fast. There was no way around it. How many people only broke through after reaching the second limit? This was equivalent to an ordinary fifth transformation. Evolving on such a foundation was naturally incomparably terrifying. It was not just his body. Ling Han discovered that his mystic energy had also become purer. If it was 100% in the past, now it had been suppressed to 10%, or even a little less. This gave him a strong feeling of powerlessness and emptiness. Because he could not absorb the mystic energy of heaven and earth, he could not stop to set up a nouveau riche formation. If he was powerless, then so be it. In any case, it did not harm his life source. An hour later, Ling Han felt that his life source was showing signs of being damaged again. He hurriedly ate another Phoenix King jade fruit. His evolution was both fierce and lasting. After another hour, he ate the third Phoenix King jade fruit, and on the fourth hour, he ate another one. Ling Han could not help but grit his teeth. If he continued to evolve even after he ate the last Phoenix King jade fruit, what would he do? It would harm his life source. Even if he had peerless treasured medicine to heal it in the future, an injury was an injury. Perhaps it would cause a big problem later. Hopefully it would not. However, 4 Phoenix King jade fruits were not enough. Ling Han had no choice but to eat a fifth one. The changes in his body continued to shake like a mountain, as if it had no intention of stopping. Ling Han wanted to cry. The longer it took to break through, the greater his potential. But without the treasured fruit to replenish his life source, this was a little like courting death. Half an hour later, the speed of evolution suddenly slowed down. It was finally going to stop. Ling Han let out a long sigh. He was really scared to death. Sure enough, after another 20 minutes, the evolution of this life source had almost completely stopped. If it could be said to be a violent storm before, then the rain had stopped now. Only the eaves were still dripping water. Another 7 minutes later, everything came to a halt. Ling Han opened his eyes. Shwa, his gaze was like lightning, flashing across the room with a dazzling light. But he quickly recovered. Blood Transformation Realm. Chapter 3281. The next day the sun rose as usual. Ling Han had a good night's sleep. When the sun rose, he seized the time to cultivate, quickly filling up his meridians. In the remaining time, he continued to raise the intrinsic quality of his life. His meridians were still expanding, but the vitality factor in his body was increasing. This was increasing the intrinsic quality of Ling Han's body, advancing towards a higher level. Let's go and beat up Huyang again. I'll completely convince him. Ling Han actually didn't have an overbearing personality, but he had never provoked Hu Yang. However, Hu Yang had come time and time again to step on him. Did Ling Han still need to be polite? Today he definitely had to beat him up. Beat him up. Beat him so hard that even his parents wouldn't be able to recognize him. Ling Han brought along the little maid. But to his surprise, Huanshua's meridians had actually risen to 12. TSK, he had really underestimated this maid. She was pretty awesome. Work hard. Break through to the blood transformation realm as soon as possible. Ling Han smiled. Huanshua nodded vigorously. Young master had given her such good conditions. She definitely had to work hard, and then help young master. She couldn't always let young master block in front of her, because she was the maid. She carried the little pink pig, and the two of them walked unhurriedly to the training grounds. This time, Hu Yang had finally learned his lesson. He had set a time for the final battle, so he didn't have to wait from morning to noon, and be ignored by Ling Han for half a day. There were still many onlookers. It was a sea of people. Ling Han pushed through the crowd and walked in. He saw Hu Yang standing proudly like a javelin. Seeing Ling Han and Huanshua walk over, Su Yuliang immediately revealed a look of hatred. Because of that bastard Ling Han, not only had Hu Yang's reputation plummeted, but the Hu family gang had also become a huge joke. Apart from a few hardcore supporters, who were the direct descendants of Hu Yinfeng and couldn't change sides, the other lackeys already had thoughts of finding other backers. This was all Ling Han's fault. Ling Han looked again. The academy's teacher this time was actually Tu Yin. This senior instructor's face was a little dark. He didn't want to come at all, but he was usually not very popular, so this time he was pushed forward again. Damn! The wounds on his body hadn't healed from the great battle with the seal soldier last time. He glanced at Ling Han with some resentment in his eyes. Ling Han couldn't help but shiver. Why did Tu Yun's gaze resemble that of a resentful woman? In today's battle, you are not allowed to use any Dharma artifacts or seal soldiers, Tu Yun said seriously. Then he looked at Ling Han and emphasized, you are not allowed to use any seal soldiers. The corner of Ling Han's mouth twitched slightly. Your expression and tone are very hurtful, okay? I'm not deaf or stupid. I don't need you to say it twice. Tu Yun rambled on and on about the rules of the duel. It was basically the same as what he had said a few days ago. Then he said, let's begin. This time, Hu Yang was not in a hurry to make his move. He had suffered 2 consecutive losses at the hands of Ling Han. He must avenge this grudge. Therefore, he would not defeat Ling Han in one blow. He would slowly torment him. Ling Han, I have to admit that you are very courageous. You dare to agree to fight me, he said coolly. Ling Han grinned. You a loser? No, a loser who has lost to me twice still has the courage to challenge me. What reason do I have to refuse? No, let me say those words. You a person who has lost twice still want to fall at the same place a third time. I admire your courage. This was a lie. Hu Yang's face instantly became as red as a pig's liver, and even turned black. He clenched his fists tighter and tighter, his knuckles cracking. He gritted his teeth and said, Ling Han, you shameless guy. The first time, you tricked me out of the chance to use my blood energy boil. The second time, you used the ultimate bone realm seal soldier to wound me. You still have the nerve to say this. Hearing this, the surrounding people couldn't help but laugh. Speaking of this guy was really quite pitiful. He had been tricked. Logically, Ling Han was not an idiot. He specialized in tricking people. Would he obediently allow Hu Yang to take revenge this time? Impossible. Therefore, Ling Han definitely had already prepared a dirty move. Everyone was puzzled and expectant. Under the precondition that the rules had been set, what kind of dirty move would he use? This was the deepest impression that Ling Han had left in everyone's hearts. Tricking people. Ling Han smiled slightly. So you want to be tricked a third time? Hu Yang panicked. Originally, he did not need to be afraid of a opening Pulse Junior sect brother. But he had been tricked twice by Ling Han. The second time, he had not even used a single move. How could he not have a shadow in his heart? Had Ling Han set a trap for him again? This boy was extremely cunning. How could he accept a challenge knowing that he would lose? Therefore, there had to be something fishy going on. Hu Yang and the majority of the people thought that Ling Han definitely had some dirty trick up his sleeve. Ling Han smiled slightly. If you still do not act, then I will not be polite. Hu Yang decided to use an action to counterattack and gain the upper hand by striking later. In any case, he definitely had the upper hand in terms of raw power, and it was an overwhelming advantage. As long as his mind was not in a mess, what could Ling Han do? Yes, that was it. Ling Han took a deep breath. Then with a bang he dashed out, exploding out at 1.3 times the speed of sound. Head on, head on. In the past he had schemed in every possible way, but that was because he had no other choice. He was not as strong as his opponent. Head on was an idiotic action that was seeking death. But now that he had enough strength, of course he would go head on. Boom, he punched out. Previously, he had been fine when he did not circulate his power. Now that he circulated his secret power, a faint purple blood chi surged out of his body. It was as if his entire body was enveloped in a layer of purple mist. Seeing this scene, everyone could not help but open their mouths. Then they could not close them. Purple blood chi. First blood transformation. So it turned out that Ling Han had quietly advanced into the blood transformation realm. A few days ago, he was only at the opening pulse realm. In just a few days, he had advanced into the blood transformation realm. What a monster! Who would not go into seclusion to advance into the blood transformation realm for a year or so? How could he succeed in just a few days? Before they had time to exclaim in surprise, Ling Han had already rushed in front of Hu Yang and punched out. In reality, Ling Han was also very displeased. Who the hell did you think you were? Just because you were a senior student and had strong strength, you came to bully us freshmen. Not only did you suffer a loss, you actually wanted to challenge me. Challenge, 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 I'll beat you to death. This punch was surrounded by a faint purple aura. Ling Han had already used the demon monkey fist. However, he did not use too much power to stack it. It was only 15 layers. Hu Yang similarly did not have time to be shocked. He could only counterattack with a claw. Otherwise, if he was hit by this punch, even if he did not die, he would be crippled. Pung, the two of them collided. Their fist and claw almost collided together. A terrifying force transformed into waves that could be seen by the naked eye, surging out continuously. Then both of their figures shook, and they retreated at the same time. One retreated by half a step, while the other retreated by half a step. It could almost be said that they were evenly matched. Chapter 3282. Ling Han retreated a bit more. After all, his primordial strength was slightly inferior to Hu Yang's, but it was really just a slight difference. The crowd was silent at first, but in an instant, it exploded into a huge uproar. With just one punch, they were really shocked. Ling Han had entered the blood transformation realm, and had the power to face off against someone at the 5 transformations. One had to know that although Hu Yang had made a fool of himself, and his popularity and reputation had fallen to rock bottom, his strength could not be denied. He was a genius, and had once cultivated to 20 meridians in the illuminating pulse realm. But Ling Han was still at the first transformation, and yet he could match him. How could they believe it? Could it be that Ling Han's blood chi was already boiling? Impossible. Boiling blood chi had incomparably obvious characteristics, and Ling Han did not look like it. Damn it! Hu Yang himself was even more shocked. Only now did he know why Ling Han dared to accept the challenge a second time. This time there was no scheme, no trap, just a head-on clash. The others also realized it, but they had a strong feeling of discomfort. Ling Han, who did not fight head-on, was so awkward. They could not accept it. After the shock, Hu Yang actually calmed down. The illuminating pulse realm had a limit. At most, one could reach the second limit, which was 1,000,000 kilograms of mystic power, and 1,000,000 kilograms of physique. After entering the blood transformation realm, mystic power would greatly increase. So it was not strange that Ling Han had over 1,000,000 kilograms of primordial strength. The second limit. He was so jealous that he was about to go crazy. Before this, only one person had reached it. Logically speaking, there definitely would not be a second Hong Tian steps. But now, he could not help but believe that another heaven-suppressing monster had appeared. But even if this kid had 1,500,000 kilograms of mystic power, after his blood chi boiled, he could only reach 4 million kilograms of strength. Adding in physique, he could at most reach 5 million kilograms. And him? 7 million kilograms. This was still a crushing defeat. Hu Yang nodded. He had never expected to defeat Ling Han in his normal state. Then he would directly enter the battle of the strongest. He roared, his blood chi boiling. A crystal-like aura enveloped him, as if it was jumping. Come! He roared and attacked with the claw of destruction. Just the force alone was enough to tear apart steel. Ling Han snorted, and also boiled his blood chi. His blood chi immediately circulated 10 times faster in his body, surging with an incomparably powerful force. He still used the demon monkey fist, facing Hu Yang's claw. Bam! The fist and palm collided again. This time the fist blocked the claw. No way. Hu Yang's face was filled with disbelief. His calculations were very accurate. Ling Han's explosive power should be far inferior to his. But with this claw strike, Ling Han was not knocked down by him as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. And his hand was not injured at all. How could this be? Putting aside the matter of strength, he had trained in the destruction claw for more than 20 years. Now he couldn't even break through his opponent's skin. Not only Hu Yang, but everyone else was the same. They had clearly seen Hu Yang use blood chi boil. But why was it that not only was Ling Han not inferior, he was even able to match it? It was very simple. Ling Han had grasped his opponent's attack frequency. The rhythm of the 15 stacks of strength was incomparably ingenious, completely dispersing the power of Hu Yang's attack. This had been named by Ling Han as the frequency technique. As long as he could grasp the pulse of the frequency, he would be able to use the weak to defeat the strong. Of course, there was a limit to this strength. Hu Yang, I don't know you, but you first relied on your seniority to come to the new student area to trample on me. After I chased you away, you didn't care about bullying the weak and challenged me to a battle. I taught you a lesson, but you still haven't learned your lesson. Now you're doing it again. Ling Han snorted. Another punch exploded out. Bang! Hu Yang blocked it. His face was somewhat pale. It wasn't because he had been injured, but rather because Ling Han's words had stabbed at his sore spot. You really are despicable. Do you really want me to beat you until I'm satisfied? Ling Han continuously punched out. Bang! Fine, I'll fulfill your wish. Bang! I'll beat you to death, you bastard. Bang! With each sentence, Ling Han threw out a punch. Punch after punch, it was like a thunderbolt or a storm. The more he spoke, the angrier he became. Having come to this foreign world, the Empress and the others could only stay in his body, and he didn't know when they would be able to come out. He already had a stomach full of anger, but Hu Yang just had to provoke him again and again. Good. Now he had a place to vent his anger. Pung 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 pung. Ling Han's attack speed became faster and faster. Even the majority of blood transformation cultivators could only see his fists flying through the air. It was as if the entire sky was filled with his fists. They couldn't help being shocked. How were they supposed to block such an attack? The more Hu Yang fought, the more panicked he became. He felt that his power had the upper hand, but his opponent's power was incomparably solid. It was as if his attack was a mountain of mud that was easily punched through by his opponent's stone fists. He was unable to cause the slightest bit of damage. He once again regretted it. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have restricted the use of magic tools and talisman soldiers. That was because he also had an ultimate bone tier talisman soldier that had been forged by his father. Was this a trap of his own making? When he had the upper hand in terms of power, he had been defeated by a single blow from Ling Han's talisman soldier. Good. Now that he had restricted the use of talisman soldiers, Ling Han's power had risen. It was enough to match him, and even faintly showed signs of suppressing him. Why was he so tragic? Ling Han gave a long whistle, and continued to increase his battle prowess. If 15 stacks of power could not deal with him, then he would use 20 stacks. Ling Han suddenly increased his power. Pung! With a single strike, Hu Yang was instantly sent flying. He could only strike out with 15 stacks of power. Previously, he had just managed to fight to a draw with Ling Han. Now that Ling Han had increased his power, he naturally was no match for him. Peng Ling Han took advantage of his victory to pursue his attack, and once again punched out. Hu Yang barely managed to parry it, but he was once again sent flying by this punch. Feels good, right? Ling Han shot forward like an arrow, practically exploding out at twice the speed of sound. Anyone who saw it would stare in awe. Twice the speed of sound. That was a speed that only someone in the ultimate bone realm could reach. But someone who had just entered the blood transformation realm was able to do so. It had to be known that the majority of people in the blood transformation realm would only be able to reach the speed of sound at the third transformation. The main reason was that their physical bodies were unable to bear it, and once they reached the speed of sound, their bodies would first collapse. Peng Hu Yang became a punching bag, being bombarded by Ling Han as much as he wanted. He had dissolved the majority of Ling Han's attacks, but there was still some left over that landed on his body, causing him pain. If this continued for a long time, he might even be heavily injured and die. Everyone could see that although Hu Yang was still barely holding on, he had already been defeated. It was just that he hadn't admitted it yet. This time, no one doubted Ling Han's strength any longer. This fellow was not only shameless, and had set traps for others. His true strength was also heaven-defying. Ling Han won battle to restore his reputation, but Hu Yang was miserable. He had been defeated 3 times by Ling Han. Whether it was in intelligence or strength, he had been completely suppressed. He was fated to become a huge joke. Stop, said Tu Yen. He couldn't continue watching. This was no longer a decisive battle, but a one-sided beating. Everyone looked at Ling Han with incomparably complicated gazes. A new star had already been born, and it could not be suppressed. That's right, this old man whose surname wasn't Chung had already come. He smiled and said, "Is Miss Feng doing well now?" "Miss is doing very well now." Butler Mu revealed a smile, like a kind father full of comfort. Ling Han shook his head in his heart. This Butler Mu had really fallen for her completely, treating Feng Ruoxian like his own daughter. Whatever, this was someone else's choice. As long as you're happy. Although His Majesty the Saint Emperor has yet to come out of seclusion, Miss is the representative of Hidden Tiger City. Her significance is extraordinary, and she will definitely be favored by the Saint Emperor in the future. Butler Mu continued, but his expression suddenly darkened. Miss is very close to the princess. In his opinion, Feng Ruoxian shouldn't have married into the imperial family. Although she could obtain a great position, she wouldn't be able to obtain happiness. Moreover, the imperial family was fighting for the throne. In the future, once the Saint Emperor passed away, no matter which prince ascended the throne, there would definitely be a big settlement. Therefore, it was better to marry into an ordinary family. Although it would be ordinary, it would be safe. Ling Han didn't interrupt. He and Feng Ruoxian didn't have much of a relationship. What she decided was her business. This time I came. Butler Mu wanted to say something, but stopped. He paused for a moment before saying, Miss has just arrived in the capital, and is unfamiliar with the people and the place. She also doesn't have anyone she can use. Therefore, I'd like to ask for your help. Ling Han was surprised. Help. It sounded nice. But didn't she actually want to take him in as a servant? With Ling Han's current reputation, if Feng Ruoxian could take him in as a servant, then her status in the capital would suddenly rise by a large amount. However, where did Feng Ruoxian get the confidence to want him as a servant? Her skin is too thick. I owe you. If you are not willing to tell me, I will only make you sad if I ask. So it is better not to ask. Damn, why does this brat not look like a 20-year-old youth at all? Niu Huaqing sighed and said, Back then, I was also a person who stirred up a storm in the capital, and was known as an array genius. I entered the Dao through arrays. Although I was only at the extreme bone realm, I could fight against those at the engravement realm. Because of this, I was very arrogant when I was young and looked down on everyone. Ling Han interrupted, You are also like this now. The corner of Niu Huaqing's mouth twitched. He had the urge to hit someone, but he suppressed it. Later, I fell in love with a woman and started to pursue her. However, there was still someone competing with me at that time. He closed his eyes and seemed to be reminiscing. After a while he said, "In the end, I arranged a battle with that person. The loser would automatically withdraw. In the end I lost." Didn't you say that you could even fight against those at the engravement realm with arrays? Ling Han painfully poked at his scars. Niu Huaqing sighed and said, "That guy was a freak. His physique was shocking and naturally restrained me." Ling Han's heart stirred and he said, "The Vajra general." If one had to say that his physique was the most tyrannical, and was at the engravement realm, then only the Vajra general would fit that description. Niu Huaqing glanced at Ling Han and nodded. "It's that bastard. I don't know how he cultivates, but his body is even harder than iron. No matter what methods I used, he just charged over without any care. There was no technique involved at all." When he said that, he was clearly indignant. In his eyes, the Vajra general's formation-breaking methods were incomparably crude and shameless. Ling Han couldn't help but smile. Formation masters were indeed afraid of this kind of high defense. They could only trap it, but if they couldn't trap it, then they could only watch helplessly as their opponent crushed them. "Not only did I lose this battle, but I was also heavily injured, leaving behind a wound that can never be healed." Niu Huaqing continued, "That's why my current combat strength is only at the blood transformation realm. My spiritual force has been severely depleted, and I can barely activate a middle-rank formation." "So that's how it was." Ling Han nodded. "Otherwise, if this old man still had the strength of an engravement realm, he wouldn't have been able to escape alone. I've always been unwilling." Niu Huaqing clenched his fists. "Could it be that you still want to snatch back the person you love?" Ling Han looked at Niu Huaqing in shock. "How old were you? You should be in your 70s or 80s, or even 100 years old." Niu Huaqing glared at him. "I'm unwilling to lose to that iron lump. Do you think the Grand Formation Dao can't do anything to someone who's only trained in martial arts?" Ling Han patted Niu Huaqing's shoulder and smiled. "Old Niu, I almost misunderstood you." "You already misunderstood?" Niu Huaqing was speechless. Talking to this brat really required good self-restraint, or he would want to kill him at any moment. "Brat, I need you to do something for me," said Niu Huaqing. "You really are impolite." Ling Han smiled. "Tell me, as long as it's within my ability, I'll do my best to help. I want you to participate in the Formation Dao competition at the beginning of the year and obtain first place. Use that as an opportunity to enter the Formation Dao Association and become the strongest formation master. In the future, you can defeat the iron lump and prove the Formation Dao's name." Ling Han smiled. "Old Niu, even you weren't able to defeat the Vajra general back then. What makes you think I can?" "Because back then it was just me. Now with my wisdom and experience, as well as your talent, you'll definitely win," said Niu Huaqing with absolute certainty. Cell phone reading is refreshing. Chapter 3286. Ling Han didn't think it was reliable, but he didn't want to shatter the other party's confidence, because he firmly believed that his strength would surpass the Guardian General one day. If his thoughts were known by others, they would definitely say that he was delusional. Although the Guardian General wasn't the strongest in the engravement realm, he had never tasted defeat. This was because no one could break through his defense. However, Ling Han didn't think so. If the Guardian General's defense was invincible, he wouldn't have succumbed to the current emperor. Therefore, there was no such thing as an invincible defense. It was just a matter of whether one's attack power was high enough. "All right," Ling Han nodded. He was quite interested in array formations anyway. Niu Huaqing was a little excited. He rubbed his hands and said, "From today onwards, this old man will give you special training. One day, you will use the array formations that this old man has researched to beat that iron lump to the point of kneeling and begging for mercy." Ling Han couldn't bear to spoil his fun, so he nodded and smiled. "I want to take you as my master." Niu Huaqing shook his head. "You're a monster, and your future is limitless. This old man can only give you a few temporary pointers on array formations. There's no need for you to take me as your master, lest the future generations say that this old man is shameless." Ling Han only smiled. His respect for Niu Huaqing was more of a kind of friendship despite the difference in age. Moreover, in this world, whether it's martial art array Dao or alchemy Dao, they're all in the early stages. We've only glimpsed the edge of the great Dao, who is qualified to be called a master. Niu Huaqing said with great emotion. Ling Han was surprised. He didn't expect Niu Huaqing to have this kind of understanding. Old man Niu, why do you think so? Niu Huaqing thought about it and said, this old man once entered a historical site when he was young. It could be said to be magical. I clearly entered from the wilderness, but after I passed through a door, I found myself in a vast swamp. That was definitely not an illusion, he emphasized. It was spatial technology. A door is equivalent to a spatial wormhole. It's incomparably magical. His face was full of excitement. This kind of technology is something that even an array grandmaster like me can't understand at all. It seems like the world we have touched is just the tip of the iceberg. Ling Han's interest was piqued as well, and he said, the Vajra general and the others have been in the engravement realm for at least 60 to 70 years, and we are only in the early stages of a great era. Why haven't the Vajra general and the others taken another step forward? This was very unreasonable. Those who could stand out now must be geniuses in martial art. So why was it that they were still progressing so slowly in the early stages of martial art? Good question. Niu Huaqing nodded, revealing a hint of admiration. I've also researched this question. Around 90 years ago, Iron Lump and the others had already stepped into the engravement realm. But after all these years, they've only reached 5 veins at most. Why? According to this old man's speculation, it's because of the environment. Oh, Ling Han's eyes lit up. Please elaborate. We'll have to start from 120 years ago. Niu Huaqing cleared his throat. Before this point in time, there had never been a single cultivator on Heavenly Ocean Planet. But in fact, some cultivation techniques, and even arrays had already been passed down. Ling Han was surprised. There had been cultivation techniques passed down, and there had been arrays in the world, but no one had mastered them. Wasn't this strange? However, after the time node, beasts began to rapidly evolve, and so did humans, Niu Huaqing said solemnly. So, this old man speculated that this was because the environment of the world had changed. If you want to cultivate, you have to sense the power of heaven and earth, right? But in the past, this didn't exist at all. So how could you sense it and cultivate? It's the same with arrays. You need to borrow the power of heaven and earth, but there is no power to borrow. The array base is just a few broken stones and broken iron rods. This explanation was very reasonable. Just like in the Yuan world, there were only cultivation techniques, but there was no spiritual power. So how could one cultivate? Ling Han drew inferences and said, Old man, what you mean is that although we are still at the beginning of the myriad Daos, because the changes in the environment of the world have not caught up, the emergence of higher-level martial artists is limited, and the number of high-level martial artists is also very small. That's right. Niu Huaqing nodded, full of admiration. It was comfortable to talk to smart people, because they could understand with a hint, and Ling Han could draw inferences, which made it even more pleasant. So, this is your chance to catch up quickly, the old man said. Iron Lump and the others have nowhere to go, so it's equivalent to waiting for you in place. Ling Han nodded, then smiled and said, I'm afraid that when I reach their level, the environment of the world will still not change, and that will be depressing. The path of martial art was clearly very long, but it was limited by the environment of the world, and could not move forward. Just thinking about it made people feel depressed. It won't. Niu Huaqing shook his head. Since the world has already recovered, then this process cannot stop. It is only a temporary pause now, like the calm before a storm, but once it starts again, it will definitely be incomparably fierce. So now is the best time to catch up. Indeed. Ling Han agreed. At this time, if he could not catch up quickly, it would be like when he first entered the celestial realm. Any random person would be much stronger than him, and the time needed to reach the 9 heavens would be calculated in hundreds of millions of years. So now every minute and every second was incomparably precious. If he was not careful, he would fall behind. When the environment of the world changed again, and a great era rolled in, Then the people behind would be left further and further behind. That's right, old man. How did you come in? Ling Han was surprised. Entering the academy required fingerprints. Niu Huaqing sneered, and with a look of disdain he said, "This academy's formation was set up by this old man." Oh, no wonder. The old man could completely not take the normal path, and the defensive formation would not even be activated, so it would be like walking on flat ground. "Come, kid, this old man will teach you formations," said Niu Huaqing. His physique was incomparably strong, and no matter how many attacks came, it would be like a light breeze. However, the Vajra general was guarding the borders. So how could he leave everything behind just to get some honey? Thus, a few blood transformation realm cultivators had to be fully prepared before entering the catacomb. Otherwise, they might lose their lives. Ling Han was not afraid. He had the spirit-nurturing gourd. At most he could hide inside. He believed that the purple wasps were not intelligent enough to discover the secrets of the spirit-nurturing gourd. Of course, he would not reveal the secret of the spirit-nurturing gourd. Just its spatial attribute alone made it incomparably valuable, not to mention its ability to nurture one's consciousness. Let's wait. Taking advantage of these few days, Ling Han actively refined pills. These were not for sale, and he would only use them for himself. He calculated the time. There was still a month before he passed the test. Thus, he would return from the catacomb and get certified as an array master. It would be just in time for him to participate in the array Dao competition. In just 7 days, the auction for the improved Qi returning pill began. An ordinary Qi returning pill was sold for 10,000 xianbei coins, which was already very expensive. After all, it was a consumable item. However, the highest price for the improved Qi returning pill was 230,000, and the lowest was 200,000. After Ling Han found out, he smiled slightly. He could happily earn money again. Chapter 3289. The improved version of the Qi recovery pill was sold at such a high price because of its low quantity. However, once it could be mass-produced, the price would definitely drop. But it wouldn't be difficult to sell it for 100,000. The key was the cost. In terms of ingredients, it would cost about 17,000 xianbei coins per furnace, and the finished product would be 3 to 4 pills. In theory, the cost of one pill would be around 5,000. But considering that only Ling Han could achieve a 100% success rate in pill formation, the costs would definitely rise. According to the 50% success rate, the cost of the ingredients would be 10,000, and the labor would be another 10,000, so the net profit would be 80,000. Ling Han would get 40,000 for half of it. The key was that Ling Han didn't need to move a finger, and he could earn 40,000 for every pill he sold. Naturally, it would be great. Moreover, there was the improved version of the Mystic Power pill and the Pulse Exploring pill. Although the price of each pill was lower, the demand was greater, and he believed that the profit would not be small. This was just the beginning, and he could improve more pill recipes in the future. Alright, the problem of money was not to be considered for now. The problem now was spending money. He was looking for the remaining 7 main ingredients to concoct the soul separation pill. He already had an idea. As expected of the imperial capital, as long as you had money, there was nothing you couldn't buy. After another 3 days, Xianyuan Dinghua came to find him, and he could set off. Ling Han asked Lien Shuerong to take care of Summon Snow on his behalf, and he set off alone. After some thought, he did not bring that little lecherous pig with him, though bringing this little lecherous pig would increase his safety factor. It would also increase the factor of instability at the same time. Forget it. It would be better to let it continue to harm the female students and take advantage of them. Ling Han and Xianyuan Dinghua first arrived at the entrance of the academy to meet up with the others. Not long after, a tall and sturdy young man appeared, looking about 24 or 25 years old. "Come, let me introduce you," Xianyuan Dinghua said. "This is the 7th grandson of the Vajra general Qin Xingho." Ling Han nodded and said, "Brother Qin." No wonder his physique was so shocking. As the descendant of the Wuxia general, he must be an expert in body refinement. Qin Xingho didn't have any dissatisfaction. Although Ling Han didn't have much status, his potential was too great. He was known as the second Hong Butian, and his future was limitless, so it was normal for him to be arrogant. He also nodded at Ling Han, and did not say anything else. Ling Han knew that Xianyuan Dinghua must have paid a certain price for him to be able to squeeze his way into the cave. Otherwise, who would dare bring so many people? He looked at Xianyuan Dinghua, and Xianyuan Dinghua smiled at him. There was no need for words. Stop flirting in front of me, you two. If you want to be gay, hurry up and get a room. Qin Xingho laughed. That mouth of yours. Xianyuan Dinghua shook his head. Logically speaking, Qin Xingho and Xianyuan Dinghua were from different generations, but they didn't seem to care about seniority. Not long after, another person arrived. However, this time, it was a charming woman. Xianyuan Dinghua immediately whispered into Ling Han's ear. This is Eclipse Moon's granddaughter Yin Xiujing. Ling Han nodded inwardly. Eclipse Moon was the only female of the four marshals, and she had the fewest offspring. After all, she couldn't just give birth for no reason. However, although she only had one son, this son had countless wives and concubines, giving her many grandchildren. This Yin Xiujing was one of the most outstanding. Try not to talk to her. This Poison Rose's favorite thing to do is to seduce people until they're speechless, and then stomp them into the ground, Xianyuan Dinghua added. What are you saying bad things about me? Yin Xiujing walked over, twisting her slender waist. Her figure was extremely hot, and she was small in all the right places. Her waist was so small that it could only be grasped with one hand. However, she also had a plump but that was like a honey peach, twisting and turning in a flirtatious manner. Xianyuan Dinghua and Qin Xingho purposely turned their faces away. This was called out of sight, out of mind. Only Ling Han maintained a calm smile, and didn't even avert his gaze. Yin Xiujing's beautiful eyes lit up. Xianyuan Dinghua and Qin Xingho could be considered her old friends. They already knew of her personality, so she couldn't play around with them. She was just feeling bored. And now there was a newcomer. Now, she didn't have to worry about the long journey, and how hard it would be to pass the time. Oh, so this is Ling Han, she said with a smile, revealing a set of snow-white teeth. There was a seductive charm to it. A natural foxy charm. Faced with this kind of charm, 9 out of 10 men would definitely not be able to control themselves. However, Ling Han was used to seeing all kinds of beauties. Some were as cold as frost, some were as passionate as fire, and some were as cold as frost on the surface, but when they were aroused, they would be as passionate as fire. How could he lose his composure in front of Yin Xiujing? Senior apprentice Sister Yin. He smiled. Oh, why are you acting like an outsider? Call me big sister, Yin Xiujing said coquettishly, her voice full of temptation. Xianyuan Dinghua and Qin Xingho looked at each other, thinking that this female vixen was going to cause trouble again. However, they didn't want to attract trouble, so naturally, they didn't have the slightest intention of interrupting. In any case, Yin Xiujing had a sense of propriety. At most, she would make people burn and unable to vent, but she wouldn't kill or cripple them. Ling Han only smiled. What a joke. He was an old monster, who had lived for more than an epoch in the Yuan world. How could he call a 20-year-old girl his big sister? Even if the flow of time was different, it was still impossible. The more Ling Han resisted, the more interested Yin Xiujing became. This was because after she conquered Ling Han, she would feel more accomplished. Hee, looks like I'm the last one. Another young man appeared. He was carrying a thick bundle on his back. Tang you didn't manage to borrow a spatial artifact? Qin Xingho asked. Xianyuan Dinghua leaned over and introduced to Ling Han. That's the Tianqin Marshal's 21st grandson. Tang Yu shook her head. Don't say it. My old man won't lend me the spatial artifact. How can I steal it? Ling Han looked around. Xianyuan Dinghua, Qin Xingho, and Yin Xiujing didn't bring any luggage. Based on this, they should have borrowed a spatial artifact. Otherwise, even with their status, they wouldn't have been able to obtain such a treasure. With this comparison, he could see how lucky he was. All right, let's go, Xianyuan said. Xianyuan said, also helping Ling Han out of the predicament, because Yin Xiujing was about to use all her weapons. 5 people set off. 4 of them were descendants of the 4 marshals. The others didn't even have the qualifications to be their companions. They attached great importance to this operation. They didn't even bring along their trusted aides, because they didn't want to share any of their gains. Also, it was a matter of strength. If they weren't strong enough, they would only be a burden. After all, there were millions of purple wasps in the cavern. How could they compete in numbers? Hee. From this, it could be seen that Xianyuan had paid a hefty price to bring Ling Han along. He had sacrificed some of his own benefits. Ling Han nodded. Xianyuan was a person who knew when to advance and when to retreat. He was worth befriending. To the purple wasps, that was their food. Birds died for food, and the purple wasps would definitely fight them to the death. The first layer of the cave wasn't big, and they quickly reached the end. The 5 of them put on their night vision goggles and saw that there were many round plates on the wall in front of them. The round plates were covered with a sticky, shiny liquid that looked like it would drip down at any moment. Get ready, Xianyuan said in a low voice. 1, 2, 3. The 5 of them jumped out at the same time, picking up the round plates one by one. Buzz! There were still purple wasps among the round plates. They flew out in alarm and immediately attacked the 5 of them. But the 5 of them acted decisively and killed the wasps without making a sound. In just 3 or 4 minutes, they had picked all the round plates clean. These were all honey. In the meantime, more wasps returned, but they were all killed. Let's go, we're not far from the beehive explosion. The 5 of them hurriedly turned back, each carrying 20 to 30 round plates. Their speed was astonishing. 10 minutes later, they had run out of the cave. The 5 of them looked at each other, pleasantly surprised. This trip had gone surprisingly smoothly. Buzz, buzz, buzz. A disturbing sound came from the cave. Not good, the beehive has been alerted. Let's go. The 5 of them hurriedly ran back. In just a few steps, they saw a yellow and purple cloud fly out of the cave. In an instant, it covered the sky and circled around the mountain. That was the purple wasps. Because there were so many of them, they had all turned into a cloud. Fortunately, these wasps didn't discover Ling Han's group. After circling around the mountain for a while, they could only helplessly return. When night fell, they returned to the spaceship. According to Xianyuan group of 4, they planned to return here. Even if they still had some of that specially refined oil, how could these wasps not be on guard after being raided? Beasts were intelligent, especially those at the blood transformation realm. Their intelligence was definitely not low. Therefore, it was enough to harvest once. Don't be greedy. I want to go back again, Ling Han said. Ling Han, don't think we can go a second or a third time, just because our first time went so smoothly, Tang Yu said seriously. She only said this because of Xianyuan. Otherwise, she wouldn't care if you lived or died. Ling Han smiled. My goal isn't the honey, but the vermilion fruit on the 3rd level of the cave. Right, you're only at the first transformation. You need this precious fruit that can increase your qi. Qin Xingho nodded. I still think it's too dangerous. Tang Yu shook her head. No worries, I'll be careful. Ling Han smiled. I'm fully prepared for this. Let's meet again in the capital, he insisted, and the 4 of them couldn't do anything about it. This time, after snatching a third of the honey, Ling Han entered the essence-nourishing gourd. He continued to use the poison of the soul-parting pill to fight against the bee venom. After spending 2 hours, the bee venom was finally completely dissolved, and the poison of the soul-parting pill was slightly dissolved. If this continued, there would be no need to concoct the antidote. Again, Ling Han came out of the gourd. This time, he rushed towards the vermilion fruit tree. He was attacked crazily, but Ling Han completely ignored it. He just plucked the fruits. After all, there were only a dozen or so it was a piece of cake. Pluck. He entered the essence-nourishing gourd again, and felt that the gourd was also attacked. From the hole above his head, He could see that the scenery was constantly changing, but there was no collision when he was in it. It was enough to show how amazing this spatial artifact was. The nurturing of heaven and earth was naturally even more amazing. These demon bees might have guessed that he was hiding in the gourd, or they might have just been venting their anger. So they began to attack the gourd. Ling Han could not help but worry. Could the gourd withstand it? Fortunately, the gourd showed no signs of breaking. From this point of view, it could withstand much more than Ling Han. After a long time, the swarm of bees stopped pestering the gourd and began to move. The queen bee moved away. The honey bee moved away. They were afraid of Ling Han. Although the vermilion fruit could not be moved away, there was no fruit left. At least they would not be able to think about it for many years. Ling Han could not help but feel depressed. He had not completely dissolved the poison of the soul-parting pill. Why were they in such a hurry to leave? He sat down and once again guided the two poisons to fight against each other. However, he immediately found that the soul-parting pill seemed to have analyzed the composition of the bee venom. At first, both sides were annihilated, but in the end, it was actually fusing with the bee venom to strengthen itself. Ling Han gritted his teeth and hurriedly swallowed the 100 transformation pill. Then, he used his own secret power to attack the bee venom and quickly dissolved the bee venom. Even so, the soul-parting pill poison was still a tenth stronger. Thankfully, he had stopped it in time. Otherwise, it was very possible that the soul-parting pill would return to its original peak strength. In fact, after fusing with the bee venom, its toxicity would mutate, and then it would be even more difficult to dissolve. He came out from the gourd. This place had already become incredibly quiet. Aside from some corpses of bees, there was nothing else. Ling Han walked over to the side of the vermilion fruit tree. He wanted to see if he could move the tree away. Although he could not hope to eat any more fruits for the time being, the Empress and the others still needed a large amount of treasured fruits to come out. When Ling Han was observing the vermilion fruit tree, he actually discovered that there were formation patterns on the mountain wall behind this tree. Could it be that there was an ancient ruin behind this tree? Ling Han was instantly moved. If he could obtain some ancient treasures, to say nothing of anything else, he only had to discover a medicinal garden, and he would have made a huge profit. This formation pattern was very complicated. Logically speaking, it should be impossible for Ling Han to decipher it. But the problem was that too much time had passed, and more than 90% of the formation pattern had already been worn away, causing its might to no longer recover. Ancient formation patterns really are awesome. Even if they're broken, they can still display their might. Ling Han sighed emotionally. He began to deduce how he could break this formation pattern and open up a corner that would allow him to enter. Ling Han tried all sorts of methods, but he discovered that this formation pattern did not suppress him at all. It was as if he was a small shrimp, and the formation pattern was a net for a big fish. It was not targeted at him at all. This was easy to deal with. Because the formation pattern was broken, he could use some violent methods to forcefully break it down without worrying about any backlash. Just like that, after a day, he finally completely destroyed this corner of the formation pattern. In fact, he had a feeling that this formation pattern itself was also being worn away. Because of the two forces working together, the speed at which it collapsed increased. Kakik, how many years has it been? Grandpa Shu has finally escaped. A voice suddenly rang out from within the mountain. End of chapter.